Can I?
We're getting our picture. It's the picture taken. We're getting our picture taken. Sorry, he's going to get yours
I
now.
can't hear anyone.
Oh, you can hear us?
I can hear you. That helps him because he can't hear anyone.
All right.
Pledge allegiance, right?
Yep.
Can you all hear me again?
Yep.
We can hear you.
All right, fantastic. Let's get this going. All right, welcome back. Call the meeting to order. Before we get started, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on our agenda is public forum. Please note that each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Public forum, and please start by saying your name and address. Is anyone present in the meeting room who would like to speak? During public forum.
There is someone.
There is someone. Okay. You come on up and start with your name and address, please.
My name is Ken Swenson, 95 Hay Road. I'm here for concerns about the carnival across the street from my house. The carnival sets up approximately about 230 feet from my house. We go to bed very early. We've lived in town for 60 years. We haven't had a carnival for a couple of years because of COVID. Previous years that we have had it, it's very noisy. The staff cannot smoke on school grounds. They smoke in front of my house. I have spoke to them with no avail at all. I have a small business there with my wife. When they see people out there standing around, mingling around, they don't come into the shop. Not that we have that much business anyways. Previous years, they used to have the carnival before the high school was built there at the middle school. I am requesting if they could move it back to the middle school. Another reason is COVID is up and down. I'm having an issue now with the school with trash and masks. When the wind blows, it howls up there, and it all blows in my yard. Constantly picking up masks and trash. School does a great job. They're constantly out there picking it up when they can, but they go home at 2 o'clock. And then I constantly get the trash and the masks. Carnival's very noisy. I know they shut down at 10 o'clock. You hear the same music all day long, all weekend long. And it's very disturbing to us. I don't want to drag on about it, but I would really like to know if they could move it down to the middle school where they used to have it for years. Only 230 feet from my house is pretty close.
Where was it in the middle school?
Middle school parking lot.
Right in the parking lot of the middle school?
If I'm saying it right, it used to be the high school. Now it's the middle school.
Right.
Am I correct?
So this is going to be an agenda item later on tonight. It is a public hearing, so you will have an opportunity to speak, and I think that might be a place where you want to speak.
Well, this thing just sent out to me that I was to speak at 6:45. I have previous engagement this afternoon tonight, so I can't be up here to speak about it. That's why I'm speaking now.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
And that was the paperwork that I got was 6:45, not later on.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your
Take it into consideration. I would greatly appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Can you remind me your address, sir?
95 Hayden Road.
Thank you.
Directly across.
Okay.
And the cultural arts is there. You know, there's no issues. It's nice and quiet.
Okay. I just want to drive by and sort of see it myself.
Yep.
Where you
Thank
are. Yep.
And the name of the business is the Old Time Cupboard.
Yeah. it's
Okay.
your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Liz Swenson.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak?
Doesn't appear so.
I don't see anyone with their hands up on Zoom, so I think we can move on to our next agenda item, which is reorganization. Select Board, sorry, give me a second here. So the Select Board will select a new chair and vice chair for the next year. Would anybody like to make a motion for chair or vice chair?
I would like to make a motion. I move to select Amy Ritterbusch as the chair for the next year, and I move to select Muriel Kramer as vice chair for the next year.
Oh, thank you.
And we usually vote one at a time anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay, so,
All right, so do we have a second for Amy Ritterbusch as chair for the
Second.
year? All right, the motion's been seconded. We'll take a roll call vote on this.
Do you want to, I'm sorry, do you want to know if anybody else had nominations?
Oh, yes. Does anyone else have any nominations?
well, I would like to nominate Mary Jo Lafreniere for vice chair, but are we going to do the chair first?
Yes, let's do the chair first, and then we can move on to the vice chair.
Okay.
So we have a motion that's been seconded for Amy Ritterbusch to be chair for this upcoming year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote on this. Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere?
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
Shahidul Manan?
Shahidul Manan, yes.
Rapana Tulsi, yes as well, and Amy, do you care to vote on yourself?
Amy Ritterbusch, yes.
Awesome, congratulations.
Hey, congratulations, Amy.
So I would like to make a motion for Mary Jo Lafreniere to be the vice chair.
Second?
Second.
Well, so we have a new chair, so do you care to do the roll call vote?
Oh, sure. So we have two nominations for vice chair, though. So do we, as a procedure, we would each state our preference? Or I guess we should ask both members if they're willing.
If we want to have if we want, so I'll let you run the show. I'm fine without other motions. Do you want to run do a survey amongst the board?
Well, I guess I would like to first make sure that both Mary Jo and Muriel would be interested in being vice chair this year.
Sure.
Yeah, I would be interested, but also, if you're super interested, Mary Jo, I would defer.
Well, I mean, this is the beginning of my second term. I didn't do it at all during my first term, so I probably would accept it.
Okay. Okay. So do we feel like we have consensus then, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So so we already made the motion, so we made two motions really, so.
Yeah, we did make two motions, but we could just, well, we do have two motions.
We do have two motions. Okay, so we could vote.
Suggestion, if I may.
What's that?
Sure.
The member who moved the first motion may withdraw that motion.
Thank you. I withdraw the motion.
Okay, so then now we have one motion on the table to nominate Mary Jo Lafreniere as vice chair. So we need a roll call vote. So, Muriel Kramer?
Muriel Kramer, yes.
Shahidul?
Shahidul Manan, yes.
I'm not, is Irfan still there?
Rapana's still here, Rapana's yes.
Okay, Mary Jo?
Mary Jo Lafreniere is a yes.
Okay, and Amy Ritterbusch is a yes. Okay, great, congratulations.
Great, congratulations all.
Okay, so the next item then is the consent agenda.
I believe, if I may, the board may go straight to the public hearing. It was advertised for 6:45.
Okay. Okay, so, let's see, the public hearing for the entertainment license application for the HPTO Carnival at the high school from June 23rd to June 26th. I will call the public hearing to order. This hearing is being held in pursuant to an application submitted by the Hopkinton PTO for a carnival at the high school from June 23rd to June 26th. And we will have a presentation by the applicant, a staff report, board questions, then we'll have public comment, discussion, closing the hearing, and a vote. So I guess we'll start with the presentation by the applicant.
Yes, so I am here to seek
Name and
approval.
address first.
What?
Name and address.
Oh, sorry. Erin Graziano, 8 Kimball Road. And I am here to seek the entertainment license for the carnival. We have done it 3 years previously, so we'll be bringing it back for a 4th year. And I think we are ready to have the carnival back, and I'm kind of looking forward to not only an opportunity for fundraising for the HPTO, but also opportunity to kind of bring us together and remember who our neighbors are and have a little fun. We did meet this afternoon, the carnival company, police, fire, and the schools, and did a walk of the property and laid out what would need to be done in order to move forward. And the carnival company was in agreement with all of the requests.
Okay. And there's a pretty long presentation in our packet as well, if
Yeah.
members of the public want to read. Okay, so then, Mr. Kamala, were there staff recommendations or comments?
Yes, please. As usual, the application was circulated to town departments for comments, and I believe those comments have also been shared with you.
Yes.
They include the following. DPW is interested in discussing the litter control plan. Health Department would like you to develop a COVID-19 protocol for the event.
Sure.
Public safety, as usual, they want to continue meeting with you to discuss public safety related issues as well as the CORI and SORI checks required for the workers. And the school department, as usual, we would like you to get confirmation that they are agreeable to the process and the event. And then from the fire department's perspective, the food vendors need to make sure that they come in and apply for all proper permits. In addition, we also looked at the conditions that the board laid out previously for the event.
Yes.
And are recommending that the board review these conditions. They are included in the script for the board.
Should I should read them out loud probably then, right?
Yes.
So the proposed conditions would be that the hours of operation are Thursday and Friday, June 23rd and 24th, 6 to 10, Saturday, June 25th from 1 to 10, Sunday, June 26th from 1 to 9. All carnival employees shall be CORI and SORI certified in accordance with Mass General Law, as supported by the police chief. Generators shall be located as far from residences as possible. The mobile housing sleeping quarters shall be coordinated with town officials and comply with zoning. Barricades shall be erected on the easterly side of Hayden Row across the street from the carnival in order to prevent the use of sidewalks in front of residences. And rides should be back as far as possible from the street, with the lattice being in the interior closer to the building. And it's agreeable to
Yeah.
those? Okay. Okay, so that's the staff comment. So now board member questions and comments?
I was just wondering if it was really too late to look into Mr. Swenson's comment on moving it to the middle school parking lot where it used to be in the
It's a much
field
smaller
where they had
footprint.
fireworks.
It's a much smaller footprint, so it might change the scope of it.
How much smaller is it?
What's that?
How much smaller is it?
I think because you have that slope, like it's really important that it be flat ground in order for the rides to be,
It does go down by the preschool, well, where
It
it used
does,
to be the
but
preschool.
the carnival is usually set up in just the spot that's by the, in between the HCA and the schools, is that right? That
So,
one?
yeah, they take up the senior lot, and then once staff leaves for summer, they move into the staff lot too. So we have both of those lots. So it goes from the Hayden Row all the way back to the high school in that parking lot area. We did, for the conditions, I think it was the last time we ran it, maybe the year before, change the hours. So on Friday and Saturday nights, it had previously gone to 11, and we moved the hours up till 10. And I know the music was brought up the last time, and they have since changed it, so all of the amusements play the same music. There's not several different machines playing different music, and they have a rotating playlist now, so it's not the same song over and over. So they have worked to address some of those issues.
Yeah, that sounds good. And the smoking, though,
Smoking
is there a
is- yeah.
designated smoking area? Obviously, they can't smoke on school grounds.
I think they can walk downtown maybe, or,
That seems to be,
Plans.
that seems to be sort of a legitimate concern. Where would it be that they could go that wouldn't be in front of somebody's house?
Yeah, that is tough.
I think they could also maybe do that when they're in their sleeping quarters.
Mr. Swenson's complaint isn't the first one. Some people, a few doors down from him also in the past have complained about the
Yep.
carnival being too close to the road and too close to their properties also. And I don't know how we fix that.
I mean, when I originally did this, I looked into every possible land place in town. Unfortunately, in Hopkinton, we just don't have any large area of public land that makes this possible. It's, I really did work to do it because there are a lot of challenges that come with it being on school property, and it would be a lot easier if it was not, trust me. But we don't really have that here in town.
So this is when school is not in session, right?
Yes, so the sleeping
They
quarters,
arrive, but they
they'll
don't.
start to set up while school is in session, and we have a schedule set up with the school. But they have to have it set up by Thursday morning when the state comes into license. And so they start in the senior lot since the seniors are out for the summer.
Yeah.
And then once staff leaves, they move into the staff lot. And the sleeping quarters will be at Faith Community Church until school is out for the session. And on Friday morning, they'll move into, I believe Dr. Kavanaugh decided, the Hopkins parking lot.
It does seem like a lot. Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, sorry. No, just thank you. I think we certainly enjoyed the carnival when it was happening. It's a great event. What is the, do you have a number of projection in terms of how many usually comes and how many are expected this time too?
Yeah, I did note that. I think it's, I want to say the number was around 700. I believe the number was around 700. No, it's in here somewhere.
Okay. And the previous arrangements for the utilities, the restrooms and others were adequate, and that's what's going to continue this time too?
Yeah, we didn't have any feedback on that, so it seemed to work really well.
Okay, thank you.
I do appreciate all the conditions that have been agreed to in the limited hours. And I think it is just only, it's only 4 days. Like, yeah, I'm okay approving it with the conditions as written. And I do appreciate the efforts that have been made to change the music and the litter plan. Yeah, I guess if the workers could be advised to not smoke in front of the residences,
can
that would be...
certainly
I don't
work
think
on
that there's a place for them to go, though.
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
Well, with their sleeping quarters at the...
at the Faith Community
I know,
Church,
yeah.
I mean, that would be great if they would.
How are they going to go back and forth?
Exactly.
It's not going to work.
The fire chief is here, maybe he has a good idea. Sorry, throwing you right under the bus, chief. Yeah.
What about asking McIntyre's?
So here's the
Kind
thing.
of across the street.
Here's the
and
thing,
they
I
have-
totally get the neighbors' discomfort with this. And
I do too.
And the one song versus all the songs is, I guess that's an improvement, right? But it still is a big imposition, and smoking really just can't happen in front of their houses. It just
Oh,
can't. And
absolutely.
it does, and it will, unless we have some place that we have set aside and folks are allowed to smoke at, right? It's just going to happen that way. They just walk across the street. Does anybody have a good idea?
Have you considered having a dedicated kind of cordon space or something
Not on
Can't be
school
on school
property.
grounds, I think.
No, it's not.
Yeah, you can't smoke on school grounds.
Oh, yeah.
Can you have a moratorium when school is not in session
Oh, yeah.
for an event like this, so that it's not, I see somebody in the back shaking their head that may know more than I do. I mean, is it possible to have, I have no idea. Is it possible to have a temporary area set aside to support this?
If I may, are you referring to if there is an area designated for smokers
Yes.
on school grounds?
Yes.
Temporary.
For the carnival employees, while they have it, while we put this on school grounds.
While
We
school
may-
is out.
Yes, while school is out. We may discuss that with the schools as well as, I think, the HCA. We may have better luck with the HCA.
I guess that would be good to look into, that if there could be a designated area, so it's not in front of the neighbors.
In the absence of a dedicated area, they will simply walk 20 feet across the street, right? Which is what has happened in the
Yep.
past.
I can try to control that with the carnival company, you know. I met with him today, and the thing that he always says is, we touch down in somebody's backyard every weekend, and we want to be invited back. That is their livelihood. And so they are very willing to accommodate and do what's best for the community to embrace it and welcome them back again. And so if this is a concern, you know, I can certainly make sure that it is addressed.
I had a thought, can they do their own trailer, like a smoking trailer?
Oh, that's an idea.
They do have an office.
And have everybody, you know, just one trailer that everybody should go to?
Yep.
We have a workplace smoking ban in Massachusetts, right?
So, huh?
So we have a workplace smoking ban in Massachusetts, right? You can't smoke inside a business, right?
It would have to be a living quarters, right?
Yeah, it would have to be a living quarters trailer, but,
Well, all this emphasis on public health is so annoying. Okay, so I guess, I mean, I have heard that, when I heard the complaint before, and I'm not trying to make this difficult, I
No,
really
I know.
support this,
I-
okay.
yeah.
When I've heard the discomfort before with the noise and it being in the high school lot, what I heard then was that we wanted it on the street where more people would see it. I didn't hear the space constraints. Can we at least make sure that the middle school lot would not work?
I can
Right? Because if
certainly
the
ask
middle
them
school
to-
lot does work, that may alleviate some concerns. We still have neighbors there, though, for sure, right? We'll still have neighbors.
Yeah, on the
around.
other
Shifting
side.
the issue from one neighbor to another.
I don't know if there's fewer neighbors or not. I don't know the answer to that. And where the school complex is back there, it might shield some of the noise. If
actually,
the
there are fewer neighbors because they have the water tanks out front.
Yeah,
So it would be, you know, back behind there.
yeah. But it's a little off the street. I don't know the right example. I think the smoking thing is something we need to solve, though.
Yeah.
So do you want to suggest a condition that they will look into a designated smoking area?
Well, I'd prefer a condition that they simply cannot smoke in the neighbor's front of the neighbor's property. Somebody has to figure out something other than that.
Is that within our purview? Because people can smoke on public streets, right?
Well, if we're instigating a situation where we know there's going to be a large number of people smoking, I think that's a problem. Yes, we can't control how people smoke on public sidewalks, but if it's our fault that they're congregating on that sidewalk,
Okay.
I don't know, I think we have to get a little creative about that. Mr. Kamalo, do you have a good idea?
I'm just thinking about the second last bullet that is included in the conditions.
Yeah.
Barricades shall be erected on the easterly side of Hayden Row across the street from the carnival in order to prevent use of sidewalk in front of residences. That did not work before?
I think that blocked the house directly across. The barriers were only directly across from the house.
The Morning Stars?
Yes, the Morning Star house.
Yeah.
Can the barricades be extended to the front of Mr. Stenson's house?
I don't see why not, as long as we have the okay from you.
Perhaps that's what we should do.
That's at least an attempt. And then, so what does that mean? Does that mean nobody can walk there too? I don't know what does it do? I haven't been to the carnival.
So, my understanding was the barriers were put there because that is just a really dark area of the road, and they did not want people crossing there. I know they also didn't want people congregating outside of the home, but I think they ended up putting a police car there too during the hours of the carnival. That's where one of the police details was.
Just for safety.
Yeah.
And because there are sidewalks on both sides of the road, so people can use the one on the school side. Right.
Yeah, but the law says they have to be a certain number of feet away from school property to smoke, right? So that forces people across the street, right?
Yeah.
So I think Mr. Qual is suggesting we could add barricades be erected on the easterly side of Hayden Row across from the street up through 95 Hayden Row. Is that?
Does that?
Yeah, the answer was 95 Hayden Row.
To prevent the use of sidewalks, sidewalks in front of residents.
And would you like me to have the carnival company put those barriers there, or does the town want to do that?
We will coordinate with your team.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we have to make a really good faith effort to explain to the carnival company that part of being welcome back is going to be not smoking in front of folks' homes.
Homes, absolutely. It would drive me crazy.
Yeah, I'd be kind of nuts about it too.
Yeah.
Or on school property.
Yeah, I didn't like that solution either, but it's got to be. They have to have somewhere to go, and I don't know the right answer.
Okay. So were there any other board member questions or comments before we open it to public comment?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Are there any members of the public here in the audience that would like to comment in person? No. Okay, and then on Zoom, I don't see anyone either. Okay. And then, okay, so I guess we would make a motion to close the public hearing then?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? And since Irfan's not here, can we stop the roll call vote?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed or any abstained? Okay, and then we will have board deliberation and vote. Are there any more deliberations? Questions?
I just want to tell you that I enthusiastically support this idea, even though it doesn't sound like it. I'm very sympathetic to the impositional nature of it, to the surrounding neighbors, right? So I don't know if there's a way to outreach and maybe even give a little gift and thank you, knowing that.
Sure.
You know, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying there's maybe some way to just, thank them for the fact that we know that it's impositional. It's going to be wonderful to see families out there again this year. We're all kind of hungry for this kind of connection and engagement and happy fun outside. And then it really is a big deal for me that we figure out that smoking piece.
I will definitely figure that out. I can very much understand their frustration with that.
Yeah.
That should not be the case.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to approve the entertainment license
I'll
with the
make
conditions as amended?
I will make a motion to approve the entertainment license to the PTO for the carnival to be held at the high school from June 23rd to June 26, 2022, with the conditions as amended.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Yes, through the chair, if I may, the amended conditions, I believe,
Right.
I'm sorry, I had stepped out.
Yep.
Will also include the comments from the permitting departments, which include the litter control plan and the overtime payment, the COVID-19 protocol, as well as the request from the fire department regarding food vendors, as well as the comment from the fire prevention officer that all equipment and delivery setup be coordinated through the school resource office.
But a lot of that was addressed today in our meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Do you want the certified mail receipts?
Please. Thank you.
Okay, so then we will go back to the consent agenda. Nothing else was timed, right? So the select board will consider the following consent agenda items. Consisting of approving the minutes of the April 12th, April 19th, and May 2nd meetings, accept the recommendation of the Marathon Fund Committee and approve a fund request for $11,600 for the Hopkins Center for the Arts for picnic tables, trash receptacles, chairs, and rocking chairs. Approve 20B exemptions to allow the hiring of Thomas Keane, Jean Can, Michael Greco, Mark Sanborn, Gregory Rumanko, Jessica Swillinger, John Golden, Cheney Godet, and Michaela Pucci to our school department employees to provide summer sports clinics for the Hopkins Parks and Rec Department. And to accept the resignations of John Morris from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, Mark Hyman from the Board of Appeals, and Erica Lawrence from the Youth Commission. Does anyone want to break out any of the consent agenda items? No? Then would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Just as is our norm, thank people for their service.
Absolutely.
In particular, you know, it's hard to lose people, but people are moving, and I think that should be disallowed, frankly.
Yeah, he's going to Chicago.
And I think from the Youth Commission, it was a move as well. But at any rate, really appreciate people's service. It really makes the town function and function well, and we hope that folks listening or reading about this will look at the open positions and consider applying, because we need you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There are several, well, we just posted the list on the website of all the new positions coming open for July 1, so people should apply now if they're interested.
And this is usually the section where I mention somebody who has passed, and Barbara Kimball, I'd like to mention her because she, in fact, was the secretary for the select board for a long time, a number of years ago. So, and Barbara passed in the last few weeks, and she'll be missed.
Thank you. Okay, so we've done consent agenda and the PTO Carnival. Okay, then we have a public safety building update. The board will hear from the project from Mr. Kamalo and public safety officials.
Yes, thank you through the chair. With your permission, I would like to invite Travis Miller to join the meeting, as well as the fire chief.
And I believe there's a PowerPoint too.
Yeah, this is, I believe, a timely update for the board on a project that has been ongoing for several years. We have provided updates to the board previously, and we felt that given some of the new information that we have developed, that this was the appropriate time for us to make this appearance and update to the board as well as the community.
Good evening.
Do you have the slideshow? Do you have the slideshow, Ben?
Okay, Travis, go ahead. Sure. Good evening. I'm Travis Miller. I'm the principal for a firm called Criterion Associates. I have about a 30-year career working with public safety agencies, doing a broad range of things, one of which is helping communities identify and cite public safety facilities, public works facilities, that kind of thing. I've been working with, this is my second generation of chiefs. I think we're still on one generation of town managers. But I've been working now, I think, for 5 or 6 years with the fire department. And as your previous presenter noted, there are not a lot of super available parcels of land just laying around in perfect places with no water and no ledge and, you know.
No hills.
No hills. Yeah. No existing giant
no
buildings.
Neighbors.
No neighbors. Right. So, you know, this is not something that every community deals with all the time, or many communities. There's a couple out there in this country that are dealing with this issue all the time. This is a multi-generational decision-making process. It's very complicated in terms of not only how you identify the site, but what's going to go into these facilities and how big are you going to be and what growth do you see coming, and all those kinds of questions that come before you as a body and before other bodies here in town. And when I'm working with communities sort of what I call the mid to small size, right, where you're big enough, you've got career fire rescue, people have certain levels of expectation in terms of service delivery, really try to take a step back and say, okay, we're not a metro fire department, we're not Newton, we're not the city of Boston, we're not Worcester. What do people expect out of us? And as a consultant, I try to step back and say, okay, they expect some level of service that they view as reasonable in a nice community with expensive homes in it, right? They expect that you will provide for the men and women that are working for you, and that they'll have reasonably nice places to live and work, and that they're efficient, and that they help serve the need of getting out the door and coming to help when you ask them to. And I think that you have this expectation of your neighbors, as they do of you, that you'll be able to handle your basic level of business on your own without having to call for help from mutual aid, right? So you should be able to handle a car accident and maybe a cardiac arrest at the same time. Yeah, a structure fire is going to strip your resources. It would strip everybody's resources all around you. So, I mean, just sort of a basic set of expectations. Ben, can you jump one slide ahead, please? And if your name isn't Ben and I just called you that, I apologize. Oh, good. I was listening. So this is just a little map of kind of where we've been. I started with Chief Slayman. We started looking at sort of a master planning exercise about what are the risks here in the community, what are the challenges that the department faces, what growth is coming, all of those kinds of things. And then we took a step back and said, okay, here's the workload. Where can you get from your fire station? At the time, you were not operating out of Station 2 when I did the first set of station location analysis. We worked with an architectural firm to evaluate the condition of the facility. They had a really broad team where we examined land use and available land, commercially available land, publicly owned land, all kinds of stuff. We identified the perfect location for a second station, which was, of course, immediately taken by somebody else to do something else with. And this is not an uncommon occurrence. It was in another community up off of 128 yesterday, and drove into town. Was very excited, like, oh, look, there's a for sale sign on that abandoned mini golf course. And he's like, yeah, it's been bought, or it's already gone. Been a great place for a fire station. So then we're back around to evaluating where are we, like what might be next, right? And I think we've kind of come down to, Ben, can you jump up a slide for me, please? Thank you, sir. We looked at literally dozens of fire station location analyses, and we do this two different ways using the same software. The first is if a community gives us a list, we can start testing those sites. If any of you have been to Florida in the past 20 years, you'll have noticed that there's a CVS on one corner, a Walgreens on the other corner, there's a bank on the other corner, and a gas station across from it. And that's like at every major intersection. They're using the same software we are, except their customers come to them, right? Instead of placing these things so that you can get to your customers in reasonable time frames, and we don't have time tonight to talk about what those are, but they're industry standards that we're working with. Ben, can you jump up one? So, the perfect solution, which as we've just discussed in a public hearing doesn't exist in most cases, would be you'd have a giant pot of money sitting around, you'd own land all over the place, and we'd be able to plop a brand new fire headquarters down as part of the redevelopment things you have going on in downtown right now, not to make traffic worse, but hopefully to make the system better. And then you'd go build a substation in the west in this magically available land, and you'd go do the same thing someplace off to the east, so that as you allow growth to continue within the natural constraints of the community, meaning like the the large gas facility you've got at the top of the hill stops you from developing very much up there. You've got large tracts of land that are dedicated still to agricultural kinds of uses. You're not going to see much development there, at least not in the near term. That doesn't exist, right? That perfect solution doesn't exist. So we're left with an imperfect group of solutions. And what do we think the best option is within a very long list of constraints? So the options right now would be expand the current fire headquarters on Main Street. That would require land that you don't own. The parking is insufficient. The parking is not even sufficient right now to operate. If they were to bring everybody back from Station 2 with the staff that they've got operating on the vehicles, plus the staff they've got there during the day, during the work week, there is nowhere to park. I mean, I can't find it. And, I'm an extra when I show up, but there is nowhere to park. So that's not a great option. You could think about, as you're dealing with the elementary school issues, perhaps the ball field at the Elmwood School. There are some access challenges there. There's the fact that there's an active school there right now. There's the fact that that's their ball field, which would be kind of a negative, right, going forward. One more place you can't put a carnival. I mean, all of that, right? So that has there's some cool stuff you could do with that, but it's not practical and it's not near term and it doesn't address some of the very short-term issues you've got. And it ties it to other big capital expenditures and other things the town may have in mind for that site and all that other stuff. Lots of time has been spent thinking about a facility on South Street, which was one of the very first reasons I think I came in, was to evaluate that very question when Town Hall, in fact, was on South Street. And that is an imperfect road for a lot of reasons. Ownership, the terrain, better uses for that land, on and on and on and on and on. It's not far enough west to solve your substation problem, but it's a little too far west to make it a great place to pick up headquarters and move it. It's not central enough, right? And it locks you into a couple of roads, one of which will be challenging the 2 days a year when they can't get the snow off the street, on South Street. So now you're down to what do you already own and what can you do with that? You could try to renovate Station 2. I know the town meeting approved some money for repairs. With that money, you could salvage the skin of the structure and keep it as a structure that will be viable for some use, whether that's as a fire station or as a parking facility for the fire department or whatever. You have work that you need to do there in order to make it useful for anything, and that's what town meeting's already approved. If you were to try to renovate that, you step off a cliff, because as soon as you touch that building, it's so small, and if you were to assess it as a commercial or residential structure, it isn't worth that much as a building. The land is worth something, but the building isn't. As soon as you touch it, you're going to hit that 30% threshold. Now you're knocking you may as well knock the building down, frankly. I did reach out to one of the firms that I work with and had them do a very preliminary, slightly better than literally the back of the envelope thing that I did, but it looked like it was just prettier. And you could do that. You actually have room on that land outside the areas that are wet, making good use of the terrain that drops off on the north side, and you could accommodate that. At some point, you'll also need to spend money at Station 1 to sort of do some of the same things you're doing at Station 2 with windows and roofs and all those kind of periodic, updating things. And you might be able to do some things to accommodate a couple more people living in there and kind of move admin around. And there's you could do a lot of things by moving a lot of pieces around. But ultimately, I think of the imperfect solutions, that's probably your best bet. It's not free, but it's not like $80 million like the perfect solution would be, given the way things are going. And you don't own the land to do the perfect solution anyway. Ben, can you jump up one? Thank you, sir. So once you've made a decision, there are some timing things to think about. So the next step will be myself and the chief, working with the town manager and staff, will talk about whether we issue an RFP, whether the town issues an RFP. That RFP would address the first two boxes that would get you a feasibility study for whatever it is that the town decides it wants to do in terms of moving forward, and it gets you to schematic design. Schematic design gives the engineers and really gives the pricing firm the ability to try to come up with a really accurate price given the current conditions of the market and the entire economy at the time. Say, yeah, we think this building's going to cost you $10 to build, which of course it will not cost you $10 to build. Once that happens, you've got enough to go to town meeting to say, okay, we need authorization for this mythical $10 building that we're going to go build, and then they need a chunk of time to do construction documents. Then you have that, you can go out to bid, and the timing is terrible. Because where we are right now, if you were to issue an RFP and get somebody working, they're not working until midway through the summer. Let's say they got done before the new year. That's sort of good, except the timing with your town meetings means it's not good at all. And it would take them 6 months-ish to do the construction documents, which really, if we were to start like now, means you don't have construction documents done until right in the middle of the summer, which is the worst possible time to... Anybody you would want touching your building will be working, presumably. Once you've got those, you go out to bid, which means really waiting until December 23. Sorry, my timeline math is bad sometimes. And then construction starts, and that's the process that the process is, a year and a half, depending on what you ultimately decide to do as a building. I do this a lot. This has been a very, very, very good team of people to work with. These are very thoughtful people. Chief Slamo's a very thoughtful guy. I know that collectively we're trying very hard to find that magical answer, not like to the other problem that you were talking about earlier, but the magical answer that will serve this community and do this community well for the next 50, 60, 70 years, which is how long you should expect a building like this to last you. Ben, can you jump up one more? Thank you. So this is from the work that was done a year ago, 18 months ago?
2021?
Yeah. By the engineering firm that came in and took a look. This was one plan that they came up with for the piece of land that sadly we don't have access to anymore out on West Main Street. It was a very cool solution.
Never mind.
It was out of mind. It was very sad.
Past this.
It was not a fun phone call when I found out I was gone. And so, this is, we don't spend any time talking about this because it would look totally different now that you'd be looking at someplace else. And Ben, can you jump one more? I promised the last time I'll ask. And this is the slightly better version of the back of the envelope thing. This is Station 2 out on Wood. If you look, the easiest way to look at this is if you look at the middle one or the one on the left, you'll see a big rectangle next to a little rectangle. The big rectangle in the middle is the existing apparatus bay. That's the garage doors you see off of Wood Street. That little space to the right currently is the kitchen, the day room, the sleeping quarters for 2 or 3 people. I mean, it's crazy. Like they got to move the chairs to pull the beds down, and then you got to move the beds to get out of the room.
I'm surprised you have that much room.
There's no room in there.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of stuff in there that is movable. Yeah. And then the space to the left, and I think that you could make some effort to save some or all of that existing space. The apparatus bay space, unless there were structural issues that they find when they get in there, you may or may not be able to save as they get in. But that's an engineer's question, not a me question. And one of the things that they came up with that was very clever was, rather than floating a 2-story structure in the air, or rather than building it on top of retaining wall and fill, they said it would actually be cheaper to build a new basement. So if you're looking at the building from the street, this is off to the left, you build a basement, which would serve also as your retaining wall to define the structure, and then you'd build a level of daily use living quarters and sleeping quarters on top. And these are not, even this is not $10. These are expensive buildings to build. But there's, you know, they should last you a long time, too. That's it. I know that was more than 5 minutes, but I talked fast.
A tiny bit more than 5 minutes. Just a tiny bit.
Did you have anything to add before we ask for board member questions?
Yes, a couple of points. Travis, Chief, great working with you, great presentation. It needs to be said that, number one, we are continuing to evaluate options as new information becomes available. So regularly we'll continue coming back to the board to provide you input. And as we're doing that, one of the issues we're thinking about is when to bring this process out to the public. We're not looking for an immediate answer today, but if you have any thoughts, suggestions, feel free to reach out and let us know. And then the second issue I wanted to clarify is that the second last slide accounted for a facility that will accommodate public safety, meaning fire, some parts of police, combined dispatch, as well as what we termed the community integration components of the building. The idea there being we wanted to look for a facility that will bring public safety to the community. Usually when you have public safety buildings, there is some distance created between the facility and the community. However, our approach here was to integrate the community.
How does that work?
Perfectly. In fact, if Ben, do you mind going back to the second
The
slide?
idea that we had, because of the property that, so this is, we're talking about 169 West Main. So the idea was you put the response stuff down on ground level because you have to. It's heavy and you want to be up there. You do offices up above, which is not dissimilar from the way that building currently functions. You can't drive through because there's ledge and like a mountain in your way kind of stuff. But the idea would be to have taken some of that land up above to purchase it and to, do you own some of it already? Some of the stuff up behind 169 West
No,
Main?
we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would have been to do some of that stuff like
Yes,
put a
yes.
splash pad in there or something, just to do stuff that would bring the community in and around that facility.
Close to you, but not into the facility.
Not into necessarily, although one of the things that was very cool that came out during this process was bringing in the community risk reduction things that are potentially veterans, maybe health, some senior services, maybe some youth services, and putting some, at least the administrative components of that, along with some meeting rooms in there, so that various constituencies of the community would have a reason to come in and interact with the facility and to interact with staff and to make them easy to get to. That was it was a dream opportunity. It really was. It was a really exciting opportunity.
Not quite over it. Not quite over it.
Where's
Still wake up thinking
169
about it.
West Main?
So
I'm trying
quick
to
question, Norman, on the multi-purpose one. Is that common? Like, I'm thinking, on a fire call, one of the trucks are trying to get out.
Yep.
And seniors are trying to come in for some service.
It's all road. That's just roads. I mean, you segregate the. So I'm dealing with this right now in 3 other towns in the Commonwealth, and a lot of them are talking about this exact same kind of thing. I mean, I know I've seen them across the country that have libraries built into them, and I mean, like as part of an overall solution. So you put the library. Oh, where's the grade down here? Fine, we can sand that. Put the library down there. Put the response stuff on top. It's just engineering. I mean, it's those are solvable problems. And yeah, you would need to make sure that the traffic flows worked in such a way that you don't have somebody trying to walk across a street that can't get across the street while you're trying to get an ambulance out to go help somebody else who also can't get across the street for whatever.
Interesting, yeah. No, definitely. I mean, if we can multi-use and optimize the investment, that's always a...
Yeah, and I think that
if it's safe and practical, of course.
That's a very valid question, and it's an issue of concern, and the architects and their site planning folks are very conscious of that as they look at these things. And I think that there's a growing interest to recognize that if we can utilize community services that we're already paying for and supporting that are focused on particular target parts of the community, and we can do things in cooperation to reduce potentially the flow of workload into fire or into police on an emergent basis, there are a lot of benefits to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a few more questions, but whenever the time is right.
Yeah, I think we should go around. So, you were done, Norman?
Yes, I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, so I guess, board member, do you have any more questions? And then we'll go
Yeah, just some point of clarification. So the identified 4 primary options, the software gave you likely the distance and geolocation choices, but what were your criteria for identifying those?
Yep.
And do you have like a comparison analysis, I'm sure through your consulting experience, that meets those criteria, and we can see those in a structured form so we can weigh in, what looks what?
Yeah, so there are reports that exist. We've done a couple different reports that the town has. Very quickly, there is sort of a national consensus around trying to get a first unit there to do something for you in 6 minutes or less, and that 6 minutes includes some time for dispatch and for people to stop doing what they're doing and drop lunch and pull on bunker gear and get in a truck and go, and then they get 4 minutes of drive time. My model's focused on the drive time piece because that's what it looks at. And so it's 4 minutes for the first unit, 8 minutes for what I call totality of response. So in a cardiac, that might say, well, you get 4 minutes to get the engine company there, you get another 4 minutes to get the paramedic there. There is some kind of unbelievably coincidental work that's been done, frankly, but some of it's very good work on its face. Worcester Polytech has got one of the best fire science programs in the country. And NFPA is headquartered here in the Commonwealth. They work very closely together. So they look at 4 minutes and 8 minutes of drive time as sort of a consensus standard, although you'll find communities varying that depending on the makeup of the community. And you could vary it within a community too, right? You could say, well, we're going to give you 4 minutes of response time in the urban or dense suburban part of the community, but if you've chosen to live 25 miles away from where everybody else lives, you're not going to get 4 minutes of response time from us. You're just not.
Yeah, I understand the logic, but given our town size and the population growth, we want to ensure that we have a consistent, reliable, and within reasonable time response rate. Do we have any study? I saw Chief Slaman presenting some response time trends and whatnot. If you have any latest, I would love to look at it. But based on that and based on these options, do you think that foundational service level requirement would be met by all 4, or there's some variation of these? I'm sure there are variations.
There are variations. I mean, the challenge for you is that the historic pocket of service demand continues to be the largest source of demand, right? It's anything you could walk to within a mile or change from here. Whether it's from the pens where the corrals, pardon me, not the pens, where they stack up the runners, or whether it's the bottom of the hill as the runners are making their departure from here. That you're talking about that pocket. The challenge for you is that the community, because of land that's available for development, and because of the pressure on every community in and around 495 all the way into Boston for additional development, is that you're starting to allow pockets of development that are challenging from a service delivery perspective to continue to provide things the same way from one location, for example. My kids live up in Andover. They have the same challenge. They had a historical pocket of development. 25, 30 years ago, they started farms started being sold. They stopped growing whatever they were growing, and now they're growing houses on that land. And that changes the demands on the school, it changes the demands on public safety, it changes the demands on public works, it changes the demands on everybody.
No, I understand. I think you have it, but I would like to understand, what exactly is the criteria based on these challenges as well?
Sure.
Practical criteria?
Yep.
And then how does this fit into those? Some better, some not so good probably?
Sure.
But those would be helpful for, helping you provide some guidelines probably.
It will. So one of the things that it's important to consider is that there's a set of criteria that I'm utilizing within the model. And that is one input into a broader model that every community, and it's different in every community, that might be, okay, I could rank order right now sites all over town, available or not, in terms of their response time benefit to you as a community. So we get that list of 1 through 50, whatever. Well, if we went and said, okay, next, let's take a look at the cost to develop that site and to put a station that's 10,000 square feet, 8,000 square, whatever it is, on there, you might take that rank order list and literally flip it upside down. I mean, it wouldn't be that clean. You'd start getting noisy, right? You add a third component, what's it gonna cost me to build there? You add a fourth component, what other uses do I have for this piece of land? Do I own it? How hard would it be for me to get? What are the sight lines like? What's the terrain like? It's a very complicated, and I think one of the next things we will do, we'll start stack ranking those things, and we did that. I mean, we did it, and those parcels of land just kind of fell out. So we can do it again.
So do other board members have questions or comments?
I do.
I do
But
too.
did you have?
Yes. Just to clarify, back in 21, we actually developed the framework for getting us to a decision. I'll reshare that framework with the board.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it does identify the criteria, and it does relate that criteria to the different sites that we analyzed. And it shows what happens to the service of level depending on what site you're looking at. And going back to the more robust facility you saw, the reason we did that was to relate the function of the facility to our ability to turn a public safety building into space that facilitates social connection, service provision in a manner that is holistic and community-centered. That's why we came up with that vision. It's an aspirational goal. It's something that will be great for this community, but we do realize that there may be constraints in getting there.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I certainly like the idea. Just want to see how it kind of lays out on all these aspects. So it'll be helpful if you have it, and it's an ongoing thing, I'm sure. And so, yeah, as a follow-up, we could probably dig into it a little bit.
So we're trying to run quite late on our agenda, so we're not voting on this tonight, but we're giving you our feedback for how we can improve the process, or what else, what other information we need, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we should hear from Muriel and Mary Jo and myself. So, you want to go first, Mary Jo?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to be having 2 stations, and see, I come from a different town and a firefighting family, and they had very small satellites in a number of places in town with maybe 1-2 trucks, that's it. And it seems to work very well. They're a heavy populated town like we're becoming, or we are at this point. And they're really small, and they're on very small footprints. I mean, I think one of them isn't even a house lot, but it's just big enough for the station. And I don't know, and we looked at anything of that nature, so the small satellite stations in various places.
That's what Wood Street would be. I mean, it's taking that station in Woodville and essentially modernizing it and taking some of the functions that, I mean, you've got many overlapping functions in one little room. It was never intended to be a fully staffed 24-hour station.
Right.
Being used in ways it was never intended to be. And that one concept was, you don't need to buy any land, you're making the best use of that lot that you've got, which in and of itself is a challenging site with the drain and drop off of the water behind it and everything else.
My thought was, with just 2 stations and the town hasn't grown so much as it has, is that going to be enough to service the town in the short period of time you were talking about? I don't see it. So.
Making sure I have a clear path to the door between me and Norman.
If I remember correctly, we heard some of this on Growth Study Committee. I think you've identified that the west side of town toward Westboro has a greater need of not being near fire facilities.
But now it's like to see everything on the east side of town.
It also has to do with water connections and
lack of
hydrants.
water. Yeah.
Distances travel from taking water station to out further south.
Road network challenges, flooding challenges. It's a complicated issue no matter what, and it's a complicated community.
So you focused on a western site, the west side of town. Okay.
We did. In the long run, to answer your question, no. 100 years from now, this will not be a 2-station fire department. When that happens in between here and then, I don't know. But no, in the long run, it won't be sufficient.
Did you get your questions out?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I'm concerned, that's all.
All right, here.
Yeah, so I won't take a ton of time because there've been overlapping sort of things, but I guess when I think about it, I want to make sure that, and I know everybody does, right, but I'm less concerned about the site and the opportunities for the building and the cost, all those things factor, but exactly that. Have we optimized our ability to respond in this town to people who need us to respond? And that's, I guess that's the foundational piece for me.
Yeah. You could try.
By moving, we're looking, just say we look at the Station 2 property, one of our biggest challenges to get to is the Woodville section of town.
Yeah.
And that is some of our longest response time.
God's country. Yeah.
Even on a good day. You know,
Yeah.
the weather conditions are perfect, timing is right, traffic is right.
Yeah.
You know, we could have a 10, 12, sometimes a 15-minute response time to
I
the
know.
furthest points of the Woodville district.
Right.
And this is one avenue that would help us alleviate those response times, get an engine or an ambulance there quicker for an emergency response.
Yeah. So that's the toughest piece of town for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. I know there'll be more discussion to come. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I know it's not an easy problem to solve, and there's no one.
It's a fun puzzle.
It's a fun puzzle.
So my questions were, like when we moved here, my boys were little, made a little tour of the fire station, police station with the Moms Club, and this was probably 2004, and they were maybe, preschoolers. And we were told, oh, if we just build this new facility and it's going to last us till 2020 or whatever, but now here we are, 2022. About how long, if we build one of these solutions, about how many more years will that last us, do we think, until we need like another station?
The building will last you, and to your point, the structure will last you that long and longer.
But the capacity, I guess.
Yeah, that's the bigger challenge. And what it's not even so much is there sufficient room in here for the people to like walk around without bumping into each other. The reality is that we as a country are asking for more and more things to be done by our fire rescue and law enforcement agencies. And we have a growing awareness of things within the industry about how do we maximize the way that we're protecting the safety of our firefighters and EMTs and police, and some of that's space consumptive. So if you come back from a fire in a modern fire rescue facility today, you come in, take off your bunker gear, walk through your living room, and go take a shower, and then come back through, covered in the stuff you don't want to be covered in. Now, in modern facilities, they're building spaces off apparatus space so that you have the circuit where you go in dirty and come out clean. Stuff is washed in that process. You don't have commingling of clean and dirty air and clean and dirty clothes and clean and dirty space and everything else. So, I spent a lot of time in this industry. I spent a lot of time going to conferences talking to people about this stuff. There are constantly evolving changes in terms of what we're demanding out of these spaces, and I think you have two things. One, do we have a headquarters space, or do we, through the totality of our physical plant, can we meet these various challenges? Sometimes it's in one place, sometimes it's by having it in 3 places, and you put expensive washing machines in one place, you don't have them everywhere, something like that. But in terms of the long run, I mean, you have an interesting challenge here where developable, useful land, which is owned by the town, is almost non-existent in terms of its like free use at this point. And it's a short and long-term challenge for the community to think about.
So I know you're focused on the west side of town, but we do own a large amount of land at the Irvine Tadero properties, but that would be on the east side of town, really. So that's probably not what you'd be looking for now. And then for the timeline here, I think maybe Mr. Cuomo said, we voted in town meeting 2021 on this feasibility study. Is that what we're doing now? Is the feasibility study?
Pre-feasibility study. We wanted to come up with the criteria for selecting a site.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next steps would be, we would have to then go vote on a feasibility study next, and then after that, vote on a building?
Correct, after settling on a site.
After what?
Selling
a
a
site.
site.
Okay.
Yes.
When there's a cost associated with that as well, unless it's something we already own. Okay, and then I think Shaidul maybe already said this, but I just think having more statistics available for the public on the response times and why this is needed now, and everything. Everyone knows that we're growing, and I think they'll understand, but just having the background statistics is helpful, I think, for people. Are there any other questions? And then how do we want to get feedback from the public, I guess, would be the...
Yes, I think it's important that we have a very clear understanding of how we will integrate the public comments into this process.
So the site selection, you would need that to take place before the next town meeting, is that right?
Ideally, we would like to, but we realize that this process is going to take much longer.
Okay. So I guess when do we need to start getting public feedback, I guess? Is that in the fall, or?
I think based on the questions we received tonight, there are components of this conversation that we can take to the public.
Okay.
There are some good, I've been part of some very good processes here in the Commonwealth. I can share with Norman and the chief where those were, and they'll know these people that I'm talking about, where they did some really neat kind of roadshow approach, where they would go out and they were going to the senior center, they were going to the assisted living facilities, they were going to the school board, and they were soliciting that stuff. And I think they learned a lot from that process in terms of the feedback they got. The number of people they brought to those roadshows kept getting smaller, because the more you give, the more.
Yeah.
So they, but there are some good processes out there for soliciting that stuff. You don't have to invent that.
Okay. So is that something you're thinking of doing then? This year, then we'll do some.
Yes, and in fact, internally we've started identifying the town boards that we also need to
go meet with. Okay,
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Once we have sort of a settled solution, though, right? This big, expansive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work, and I think it's really important to catch everybody up, but it's very hard to wrap your head around, multiple maybes.
Yes, though at the same time, we are learning very quickly from the public that when we show up with the preferred option, the public says, "How did you get there?"
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So please include that detail.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's why we
yeah.
I think that's why the structured kind of view of options based on the criteria would really help us out. And then talk to the public as well.
I have one more question of the chief. When we did the review for Chief Slam, and I had asked for more publicity from the fire department, the police, there's the police log and all of that kind of stuff. And I really want the public to understand just what the fire department does, how often they're called out, how, and the hard work that they go through, because that's going to help them understand why we need to expand the fire service. And I just would like to see more of that.
Yeah. And I have noticed an improvement in that over the year too. the fire department Facebook is posting a lot more often when they have
Right.
multiple calls at the same time. Yeah, so people are aware that they're stretched thin.
You're tweeting now?
Yes.
Okay, so we should move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, so the next item is the FY21 Audit Report, OPEB report, and 2022 Quarter 3 Investment Report updates.
Isn't the DPU process?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have so many questions next to the public safety update.
I applaud your attempt to move swiftly forward.
So now we'll hear an update on the DPU 2080 process update.
Yeah, and with the chair's permission, I would like to invite Brian Bertram, our town council,
Oh,
to join the meeting.
Brian, lucky you.
Yeah. Again, as Brian is getting settled, two thoughts to share with the board and the public. As a refresher, climate change is a strategic priority for this board. And secondly, because of Hopkinton's unique relationship with the LNG facility, we're intensely involved in the state level discussions regarding phasing gas. One of the goals of the Commonwealth is to phase out gas by 2050.
Preventing climate change.
Climate change, yes.
Favorably impacting.
I got rid of my gas stove this year. It was hard, but I did it.
So with the chair's permission, Brian.
Well, thank you for having me. Some of you I've seen, some of you are new. But all of you, I'm sure, are aware of the HOPCO facility, and the town manager is absolutely right. We typically take more of an interest in some things that go on at DPU because of that. But this particular proceeding, docket number 20-80 at the DPU, really affects everybody, and I think the way it affects everybody, and then us specifically, is really interesting. But before I get ahead of myself, 20-80 probably doesn't have a lot of meaning to most of you, so maybe I should just take a minute to give you sort of a brief procedural overview of what this is and why it matters. So again, it's before the Department of Public Utilities, who is the regulator of the gas industry in Massachusetts. So back in about June of 2020, the Massachusetts Attorney General asked the DPU to open an investigation into the gas industry in terms of how the regulatory structure works and other aspects of that, because really the way we've regulated them up to the present doesn't mix with hitting our 2050 goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Just one example is the way that we get gas contracts. They typically do it based on econometric models that assume the past is the future, but rising gas demand cannot be the future if we're going to hit those targets. So this investigation opened, and the Attorney General really didn't have much of an ask as to how it was supposed to be structured, and the DPU kind of structured it, I think, from our viewpoint, in an unfortunate way, which is to say they essentially gave the gas companies free rein to run this thing for about 2 years now. What they ordered was that the, I'll call them local distribution companies, which is the lingo at the DPU for the gas companies, ordered them to retain what they called an independent consultant. I try to avoid the word independent when labeling the consultant for reasons that I'll explain. But this consultant was basically tasked with sort of examining the different pathways that are available to cut greenhouse gas emissions to the target, whether it be by electrification, alternative energy sources, bridge technologies, whatever it is. The LDCs retained the consultant. They ran what they called a stakeholder process, where stakeholders were given presentations by the consultant and where they could make comments, but the stakeholders never really had an opportunity to see the underlying data. We gave comments, they took some of them, they didn't take all of them, and that was sort of the process for about 2 years until March of 2022, when the consultant published the consultant's final report, and the LDCs had a whole bunch of proposals about how to implement what they thought would be the best path forward. And I don't think it's going to surprise many people to learn that many of the paths that they think are good would preserve a lot of their existing infrastructure, would try to use things like what they call carbon neutral gas, where you derive it from methane, so you're not literally getting it out of the ground, or certain other things that I think would be favorable to their capital structure and their businesses, and may or may not be the best pathways forward. So that gets us to March of this year, at which point, the DPU had to do something else. And so sort of moving to August, the DPU has now taken back up the process. They're asking questions about the report. They did not authorize stakeholders to ask similar questions, so we can't make information requests. All we can do is comment on what's going on. We've sent 2 comment letters up until May, which was the initial comment deadline. The final comment deadline is June, and then there's sort of a reply comment deadline to what the LDCs say in August. And after that, once again, we don't really know what's going to happen. And so, it sort of gets us to the issues that we want to talk about tonight. And I'll preview, there's no decisions that have to be made, so this should be an easy presentation for you. This is more of just an update. But sort of issue number 1 with this proceeding is that we really don't know what it is or what the end game is supposed to be. Again, the Attorney General's ask was sort of very broad, investigate. I think the Attorney General wants to see the DPU visit the existing regulatory structure to sort of give us a greater set of tools to regulate the gas industry and, phase out gas. But beyond that, we don't really know what the DPU has in mind. I think the LDCs are pushing to get approvals for things that we wouldn't want, and I'll get to those in a minute. But how we get there is important, because if it's just a regulatory change, maybe the structure is okay. But if it's something else, then we have real issues of due process in terms of notice to the public about what's going on, about people who are specifically affected by this, such as Hopkinton, who may have a large energy facility in town, having more of an input or a say in this, but we simply don't know. And so that has been one of our comments and something we've really monitored closely, because if we have to act, we will. Climate change is obviously an issue. I'm happy to say we have many stakeholders who have a similar interest, many environmental organizations, surprisingly few municipalities. For better or for worse, Hopkinton punches well above its weight when it comes to this stuff. I have not seen another municipality really even remotely as involved in this proceeding, which is kind of surprising, and given the importance, we would hope that they would take more notice and help us with this. And then beyond that, HOPCO. HOPCO sort of creates a number of issues in this for us. I think the first is that if we get to the goals that we all want to reach, and that I know is a priority of Hopkinton, we do have to face the prospect that that facility may become obsolete. It may need to be decommissioned. And so one of the things that we're really trying to inject into this proceeding is it's simply not fair to a community like Hopkinton, or any other community that has a large energy facility, to sort of just have it decommissioned without some, decommissioning fund, some sort of money or financing or state-backed support, so that, the entire burden isn't borne by Hopkinton in terms of making sure it's done correctly, it's done properly, and it's done safely. So there's that concern. Some of the pathways that were identified may repurpose facilities. We don't really know how. And that is obviously a concern, because HOPCO is there and we don't want it to be repurposed in a way that we don't understand, that we don't want, and certainly not in a way that we don't have input into. And just by way of example, and I'm not suggesting this is going to happen or this is a plan, but one of the alternative energy sources that has been proposed is hydrogen, which, as we pointed out in one of our comment letters, is literally rocket fuel. So repurposing existing infrastructure with a molecule that's harder to contain, is more flammable, and otherwise more difficult to use than natural gas, even though it may be carbon neutral, comes with other issues, including safety, and the communities that have it in pipes or in facilities should have more transparency and insight into that. Beyond that, there's also been some proposals about from the LDCs, which would be in their favor, of accelerated depreciation for their facilities. Their argument would be is because we're going to decommission them and we don't need them, the existing life is less, and so the DPU should let us depreciate them more quickly. We may have concerns about that because, even though we have concerns with HOPCO sometimes in general, they do pay taxes to us, and depreciation can impact. I have a little bit of a chuckle there. They do it reticently. We have many ATB appeals that go on with that process. But they are a taxpayer, and accelerated depreciation could hit us on that front, too. So I think in terms of just sort of the general broad strokes, both, the issues that we share with the larger Commonwealth on climate change and otherwise, and then the issue specific to us, that's sort of the range of things that we've dealt with. We have a consultant that helps us with some of this, and we do plan on submitting comments consistent with the select board's goals on climate change and with sort of our experiences with HOPCO, both by the June 6th deadline and again by the reply comment deadline, which would just supplement the 2 comment letters we also sent to the DPU and our past participation in the stakeholder process. And otherwise, we're going to keep our eye on this because, if and when the DPU sort of lifts the curtain for us and lets us know what the end game is here, it may prove to be incompatible with our goals or inconsistent with our goals, and we may need to act, and at which point you may see me back here again asking for that authority to act. But for now, we're really in the comment mode, trying to make our voice heard, and hopefully trying to get the DPU to understand the issues that are before us. So I think that pretty much covers what I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions or otherwise talk about this, but I promised I'd keep it brief, and there's really no reason we have to go into it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go around one at a time. Mary Jo?
Wow. Just at the thought of decommissioning the plant, it boggles my mind. Maybe we can put a fire station up there. Sorry, I didn't mean to make light of it, but I'm really happy that you brought this to our attention, and I hope we can come up with it. I would really like to see the certain segment of the Green Commission, the Affordable Green Team. There's a group in there that is dealing with this sort of thing, and climate change in particular by certain dates and things like that. And I think they could be included in this, and it would help them. I just don't know. I have to digest this. So.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this, right? And I know it's a complicated question. And Mr. Khumalo, I really appreciate your strategic foresight in sort of shaping the way we approach this. It's very much appreciated. I wonder if there is any percentage in trying to engage affected communities to pay more attention and participate in the process.
I would be happy to do that. I know we had spoken at one point with the City of Boston, who is involved, but not nearly as heavily in the proceeding.
Yeah.
A couple of towns have, sort of filed letters, as they often do at the beginning of this, but we just haven't seen much engagement otherwise. I think it would be helpful. Just,
In particular, Ashland and Southborough, which are near the LNG facility, have they filed letters?
I don't believe they have. I don't remember seeing them on there, and certainly they haven't been involved in the stakeholder proceedings or commented, publicly in the way we have.
So I didn't know if would it be valuable for Mr. Khumalo to reach out to the town managers in those towns to make sure they're aware, because it does help the more towns are speaking up about something. I don't know.
Yes. 2 thoughts come to mind. One, there are non-profit organizations that are actively involved in this process. They have much stronger and better networks that perhaps we could rely upon to reach out to the other towns.
Okay.
And then this second piece is what we're discussing internally. We're thinking that perhaps there's a public relations angle to this conversation. So we are now going through the phases of deciding what that public relations approach could be.
That's challenging as well.
Yeah.
So did you,
Very.
did you
Yeah,
have any
I'm
questions?
fine.
Okay, Chair Jones, did you have any questions?
Thank you. I think this is a very complicated but important subject and matter that you're looking into, so thank you for the work. And my questions beyond the technicalities, I'd like to see the pathways, if those are available or work in progress.
Yeah, I can send to the town manager. I can pull off of the docket. There's a lot of materials there, but I'll try to keep it sort of focused on the things that it sounds like you're interested in, and I'll send those to him and he can distribute it.
Thank you, that would be great. And in terms of the scope challenge or scope definition challenge with DPU, that's I think surprising and a little frustrating, and I'm sure for you a lot. Is there anything we can do to help, or what is it? I mean, your update is helpful, but is there any specific ask or any direction that we as a group can help you?
Maybe we should go through the public relations piece of that first. I mean, I'm always happy for help. I guess my hesitation is that to the extent the Attorney General of the Commonwealth has already made asks of the DPU and we haven't really seen it, it makes me wonder if there is.
But maybe the public relations is what
Yeah.
we all want to focus on and build, or maybe another could be building a coalition among the towns and municipalities who are affected the same way, so we have a greater voice.
Yeah.
I think
In all honesty, I'm not sure the DPU knows what it needs to do with this yet.
Well, right.
And
But thank you.
But they're not a cooperative agency.
they're not. But if they don't know, then I think the biggest caution to them is that they shouldn't overreach in this proceeding. You know, if a lot of people don't know about it, or it hasn't, you know, if the notices haven't gone out that we expect to do these things,
Yep.
then they certainly shouldn't get hoodwinked by the LDCs into doing those things. And I think that's part of our message too, is that,
Right.
you know, don't overreach.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Thank you all for your
Brian.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll hear the FY21 audit report, OPEB report, and 2022 quarter 3 investment report.
Thank you. We'll begin with the FY21 audit report.
Till we finish, we'll do it.
Okay, and I think we have a slideshow for this one too, right?
Yep. Ben, if you could pull up the slides, please. Well, let's come up. I'm Ben Sweeney, Town Accountant. So through the chair, thanks for the opportunity to come to talk to you tonight. I'm here to talk about the successful completion of this past fiscal year's audit. So while I'm here talking to you about that, I'm not the only one involved. So I want to start by sharing the results, but the work behind it goes up and down the organization, starting with you in this financial oversight, flowing down to the town manager, in each department head and their staff. So this work couldn't be done without everyone in the finance department, so I'd like to explicitly say the assistant town accountant, Stephanie Clifton, and all the administrative managers in the town departments. Their work is greatly appreciated and part of this, big part of this. So if you go to the next slide, Ben. So an audit is a review by an independent certified public accounting firm that examines an organization's operations and financial results. Roselli Clark and Associates perform the audit of Hopkinton's fiscal 2021 results. So at a very high level, the auditors examine underlying records of the town's books and the accuracy of those records. They examine those on a test basis, and they use that to determine and form an opinion on whether the financial statements accurately reflect those transactions. And the financial statements are prepared using what's called generally accepted accounting principles, often referred to as GAAP. And GAAP means that a town in California can be reasonably compared to a town in Massachusetts because they're very different places, different rules. So I like to sometimes think about this as reading music. There's a consistent meaning for each note, and notes can be put together in an infinite number of combinations. But if each note has that same meaning, you can understand the music regardless of how it's formed. So consistent presentations are especially useful for bondholders and rating agencies, and they can use objective metrics to compare us to other organizations. And so I want to be clear what an audit does not mean. It doesn't mean that an organization is or isn't financially healthy. It just means that the financial picture stated in those statements is accurate. And so bondholders and rating agencies can use that and determine what future opportunities or challenges exist for organizations. And Hopkinton, we're responsible for the financial statements, the internal control environment, and the accuracy of the reports. The auditor's role is really limited to expressing an opinion that those statements reflect our records. And if you go to the next slide, please, Ben. So why have an audit? The first reason is easy, it's mandated. So the federal government requires that if you get more than $750,000 in federal funds, you're required to undergo what's called a single audit. And that's outlined by the Federal the Federal Office of Management and Budget. And the goal is to be sure that federal dollars are spent in accordance with what the federal program wants to be. The federal government's a really big organization that has hands in many different things. So in fiscal 21, there was a significant increase in the federal awards awarded to Hopkinton by an order of 290% to about $4.7 million. And that's largely because of COVID-related relief, the CARE million. And that's largely because of COVID-related relief, what's known as the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA. So generally, the town of Hopkinton undergoes one of these audits, but it was even more important this past fiscal year and will be over the next few fiscal years as these federal programs are outlined. And the second is if a municipality issues more than $10 million in public debt, it's required to go through a financial statement audit. And that's part of a annual filing that the treasurer does with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And that's to make sure that we're being audited and the records are able to reflect what our reality is. And so Hopkinton's total outstanding debt is approximately $81 million, so we're well above that $10 million threshold. And the Department of Revenue, our primary financial regulator, they recommend an audit by good practice, but we're required to either way. And even if we weren't required to, I would certainly suggest that we do, because it's good business practice and it promotes continuous improvement. Let's go to the next slide then. And so next steps, as I mentioned, Roselli and Clark were our auditors. They issued an unmodified financial opinion, which means they reasonably say that our financial statements reflect our records, and there were no questioned costs of federal awards, and I mentioned how there was that significant increase. So if you go to the next slide, please, Ben. So next steps, the last 5 years of audit reports are posted on our website on the accounting webpage. There's a link to that in your packet and in the memo that I wrote. And some of the key takeaways are to continue our implementation of the Munis system, and the purpose of that is to streamline key operations, move from paper to financial records, automate certain processes, helps free staff up time to do things that a computer can do, and then to add more value to the town that way. And then as a constant goal that the CFO talks about is continue to update our procedures, see where we can improve. And I could welcome any questions you might have.
Mary Jo, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I'm looking at it fairly, it's the same as I've seen before, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's a good job.
Thank you.
What is the timeline on the Munis implementation to be complete?
So it's a good question. I'm not sure it'll ever truly be complete because Munis is continuing to improve their software and roll out new modules.
Yeah.
So in the version we're moving to in the fall is going to expand on existing pieces in the software that's going to help streamline a lot of our operations. We're working with the HR director on some of those pieces. So it's going to be a constantly evolving thing because the software is constantly evolving. So in terms of financial records, we're using it 100% of the time. It's more kind of implementing the best of breed software as it rolls out. It's a constant process.
Constant process, okay, thank you. How long have we been with Munis?
A long time.
2014?
Yeah, around that time.
2014.
Okay, so it is expected to sort of be an ongoing implementation situation. It's not really a static circumstance.
No, in that way, we're able to constantly improve. So in that sense, it's not a static, because we want to keep moving forward, and as technology improves, so will we.
And they'll add on new modules that you can purchase, or, yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Yep. And so within that system, is there some ongoing need to upgrade, as we are more and more dependent on computers and the EHR, is there an accompanying need to upgrade?
Yeah, and that's part of our software package. It's a SaaS model, software as a service, so the upgrades are part of our annual subscription.
Great. Well, thank you for this. It was really, really well done, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I think, and the CFO office and whole staff for wonderful work. And I think this is very important. So thanks for doing this and bringing this up. Munis implementation certainly will help a lot. In general, are we planning to do the audit in a periodic time in the future, or it's going to be need-based at the moment?
Oh, at 100% every year. So this process wrapped up substantially in December of last year, and so now we're bringing you the results, but absolutely every year.
Right. And another follow-up question, and it may be something we can check offline. Of the OPEB reports audit, I found some of the variables that you have identified, or the audit has identified, and that moved the amount from 27 to 40 million, I think. Do we see that a constant dynamic changing number from the audit forecasts, or we don't know enough yet?
So the CFO will be able to give you the details of the calculation in his next presentation, but I would say that we work with the actuary to update the liability every year. So it's an every year basis, that it's not going to be, well, do these assumptions into a model, to wait 10 years and then do it again. It's a once a year process as part of the audit.
Right, yeah. I mean, I understand it's dynamic and variable, that's expected, but at least we have a sense of what the changing patterns are, so it's not, a moving target or a surprise. Yeah, but thank you, that'll be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions, but I appreciate all 5 years being on the website. That's really helpful for people who want to take a deep dive and go through all details.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With the chair's permission, Tim, you're on deck.
I appreciate that question. I did not plant that last question. I might have done so. And we'll get to that very interesting point about that. So good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Select Board. Pleasure to be here. Ben, I'm on page 100 of the packet with some slides. I'm here to give you a quick update on the other post-employment benefits, which you were just talking about. Now, that's a jargony term for an estimate of the long-term future health care costs for retirees. It stretches out 50, 70 years, 90 years in the future. If we have a 20-year-old employee who lives to be 110 by the time health care advances. So we take all those costs and the actuaries discount them down to a present value today. What would you need to put aside today to pay for all those costs in the future? So if you're going to spend $1 million a year for 50 years, you don't need to put aside $50 million today. You need to put aside around 15 million, 16 million today. So the actuaries have a very intricate method for developing this. They look at many, many factors. They look at our specific workforce, and they look at the health profile of the covered people, because they have to estimate how long these people will live and how much care they will need. So that's mortality, the length of life, and then morbidity, how much health care people consume. And that's a big thing to estimate 50 years out. We have 305 retirees right now currently involved in the program receiving benefits, and 630 active workers who are earning future benefits today that they may not collect until 2080, 2090, 2060, way out into the future. Another factor they look at is the rate of health care cost growth. We all know how variable that can be. Okay, so that's a big factor when you project it out 50 years in the future. Care is definitely getting better. Some things are getting cheaper with better care. X-rays are getting cheaper, MRIs are getting cheaper. Some things, new technology, is inordinately expensive. And it's great because it saves lives, but it's available and it's expensive, and it raises the cost in the out years. They look at an estimate of inflation, and looking at that over decades is a very tricky thing to model. And they use that to discount these future costs back to the net present value. And they estimate the returns we'll get on our investments that we have put aside in our OPEB trust fund. How will that grow to meet our expense in the future year? That's all based on an estimate. A couple things are not factored in at all. The first one is any change in state or federal policy. So the state did a massive favor to cities and towns when it took over teacher pensions. And we would love it if the state would take over retiree health care. So, Governor Baker, if you're out there, we would definitely like that very much if you would do that. Also, national health care. It hasn't happened yet. It could happen. One of the big winners would be local government, who would be relieved of this burden. So, over the next 50 to 70 years, that's going to be a big issue. If you can go to the next slide there, Ben. So now we get into how challenging this is. A 1%, just the next page in the packet. You can just scroll down to it, I think. There you go. So the sensitivity of these estimates is really the big challenge. And when Mr. Manan asked if this is predictable, I would say it is not very predictable. And it is highly volatile and highly subject to change. And it goes to the sensitivity of the estimates. A lot of times you'll have an estimate, you estimate how much a 12-year-old is going to grow in a year. That's not a variable estimate. We are dealing with estimates where a 1% change in the estimate yields a 20% change in the long-term liability. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but these are highly variable estimates, and there are many, many of them in there. From the end of FY20 to the end of FY21, and the dates are off by a year there. The measurement date was 6/30/20 to 6/30/21. Our estimated liability, the net present value of our future liability, went from $27 million to $40 million, a 48% increase as the result of a few very small changes that all went in the same direction, a direction that increased the liability. Important to note, that doesn't mean we're actually going to spend more than we would have a year ago. We're going to spend whatever the bill is. What's changed is the understanding of what that bill might be over the next 50 years. So looking at that pie chart up there, I'll just give you a sense of the sensitivity. 75% of the change, the blue section, came from understanding the age people are choosing to retire or may choose to retire, how long they might live, how healthy they might be later in life. It'll be the percent who take coverage. We have a substantial number of employees who don't use the health insurance. They get it from a spouse or military service or other places. How many spouses will be covered? All these things, when you're talking about a pool of 300 to 900 people, they have a big impact. The discount rate, the rate at which we interpret inflation. This year, the actuaries lowered the discount rate, which sounds good, from 6.75% to 5.5%, a 1.25% drop in the discount rate. That resulted in a very large increase in the liability. The next thing is the estimate of medical cost inflation. They increased the cost of medical inflation, the estimate of medical inflation a little bit, big jump in the liability. Moving up to the red slice of the pie, they're expecting a 4.5% increase in Medicare premiums. Medicare premiums went up 6%. You model that out 50 years and it has a big impact. Finally, the last 10% of the increase resulted from actual experience of our pool. What kind of health did our people have? What kind of costs did they incur? So, to the next slide, the next page on the docket. The current funding level for the trust fund is at $4.8 million after the action taken by town meeting earlier this month. So we're now funded at 12% of the new estimated liability. When the town gets to 100% funding in the trust fund, we will pay all the bills out of the trust fund. Right now we pay out of the general fund for all the retiree health care. And the idea is we'll build up this trust fund till it gets up to 100%, and then we will pay the bills out of the trust fund. And every year, the actuaries will tell us how much the serving employees accrued in net present benefits, and we'll put that much smaller amount into the trust fund bucket. And as we do that over time, the same way our pension works, we'll be paying the bills out of the pot. So that's what we're going to. And our target before this change was 2050. So this rise in liability is not great news. It's never good news to see an estimate go up like that, but it is not a crisis. We had a plan, so I'm going to use my elbow method of explanation here. We had a plan that we were here, and we had this amount of money in our trust fund, and we were trying to get to this liability funding level here where we wanted to get here. And we had a plan to start at $400,000, escalate by 2.5% a year, earn some returns on our investments, and hit our target liability for full funding in 2050. That was our goal. Now, the target has changed, right? It's moved up here. So there are a few things we can do. We could raise the amount from the $400,000 level and keep the same 2.5% inflation in the payments to hit our target. We could leave our estimate that way and escalate at more than 2.5%, raising the slope of our line to try to hit our target. In about 2037 or 2038, we're going to have our pension paid off. And we're currently putting about $2.1 million a year into the pension fund to fully fund that. At that point, those are available resources that have been going to long-term liability. We could stay on our current slope till then and then rise the slope up, right? We could bend the arm and hit our target.
Break the arm.
We could also extend our target and say there's nothing magic about 2050. In the absence of any regulatory guidance, we'll perfectly fine hitting this in 2052, 2053, or more likely we could do some combination of all those things. But it would be like if you had a new child and you felt you wanted to save money to send that child to Stanford, and you understood today that they're going to raise inflation. You would not sell your car. You would adjust your savings and investments and other things to hit that target 20 years from now. And we have an even more volatile situation with an even longer time horizon. And we are ahead of the curve in terms of regulatory pressure. So some recommendation about a combination of actions to change our intercept with this target will be part of the FY24 budget, and I'm really here today to foreshadow that for you so that it's not a surprise when I come back and talk to you about that, or the town manager talks to you about that in December or January. The takeaway really is that over decades, this estimate is going to change. Right. Things will change internally, technology, science, health, federal policy, state policy. This target's going to change. And our job is to make reasonable adjustments to stay on track to have this reasonably funded. And we're doing that.
Great.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions on the OPEB report?
Well, I have, it's almost a personal question. The Medicaid has gone up how much? How many percent for the town?
Our premium went up about, they were expecting a 4.5% increase and it was a 6% increase. And they interpret that to be a different pattern that stretches out toward the horizon.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because my personal Medicare premium went up just about the same, which is a big jump in a year.
Yes.
And it goes up a little every year, but yeah. So, thank you.
There you go.
Yes, so just foreshadowing, thinking forward. I appreciate that, and I actually appreciate the little visual there that you gave us. So just practically speaking, the jump was so big this year. The unknowns and the variables are so volatile. First, I really appreciate that we have initiated this effort and made great strides. But I think that I would favor some combination of raising the elbow and the slope, and being at least open to extending for a couple of years to sort of take, I guess, practically speaking, to take a big stride forward to covering the gap that we know we're experiencing. Seems like the right place to start for me. That's.
Yes, ma'am. We are, through the chair, the silver lining of our Eversource situation is that we're accumulating a very large balance in the overlay account.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the town manager has many competing needs. When we ultimately prevail in every single one of those appeals, for every single dollar, that is the kind of priority that I expect would be in the mix
Yeah.
for the application
Yeah.
of those dollars.
Great point.
Well, I think ideally, yeah, if we can get the overlay money back and we get universal health care tomorrow. We hit the jackpot, right? But in the meantime, I like your forecast and planning and the thought work here. A couple of quick technical questions. One is, when you said the inflation or the discount rate was based on the range of June of 2021 and 22, that's when we experience a significantly high inflation. Is that introduced, or was that normalized?
So there was a typo in my slide. It wasn't in the memo, and when I did the slide, I was between years. The measurement date was the end of fiscal year 21, so it changed from 20 to 21, and inflation was just starting to bubble at that point. The actuaries had a whole panoply of reasons that they wanted to adjust the discount rate, and when you retain somebody to do that work for you, it's really not good to go in and argue with them about their professional judgment about the discount rate to get an answer you like. We really want the answer that's the product of their professional best effort. So we're not looking for a win here because, again, this estimate isn't going to change what we spend by $1. It's a planning tool that helps us plan. So we don't want to fool ourselves like hiding the scale, or stepping 1 foot off the scale. We don't want to do that. Right. So I wondered about the impact of that change, and then I looked at the math and saw how impactful even small changes are over the long-term horizon. That 20% shift for a 1% change in the discount rate. I mean, that's
big.
No, it makes sense. I think that certainly, that being said, we want to also just check the numbers, which you have done. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So another question is, based on our current funding level, 12%, where do we lie in the spectrum of among all 351 towns?
We just went through a bond rating review yesterday, and we expect to have some excellent news on that in the very near future. But the indication we got in that, the commercial banker we deal with, who deals with many municipalities, suggested to us that we're well ahead of the pack, which is a little sad. Now, town manager often reminds me there are some communities that have fully funded their OPEB, and we're not among them, but that's a very small percentage.
Don't be that way, Mr. Kamel.
We're a little ahead of the pack, but it's not much to brag about. We used to say in the Coast Guard, don't compare yourself to the Bulgarian Navy. Nothing against Bulgaria.
I was just going to say, easy.
You want to compare yourself to the U.S. Navy, right? Or to the best
Or the U.S. Coast Guard.
Or the U.S. Coast Guard.
Come on.
Right.
You're the standard, the gold standard.
Thank you, very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Again, this is an issue that is very complex, volatile, very uncertain, and ever-changing. And I'm impressed that as a community, despite that, we're taking the necessary steps to protect the community's future.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the planning that goes into this. This is an important issue.
Yeah, thank you. Next, investments. Chris Hammond, the town treasurer. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to 3 finance guys in a row.
Love financial math.
Yeah. So through the chair, I have a brief update for you tonight on the town's deposits and investments as of the last quarter end, which was March 31st. As of that time, the town has just over $80 million in cash and investments. Of that, 63.5 is general fund money, 1.95 million deposits outside of the general fund, and then 14.75 million in our investments. This quarter, interest income did creep up slightly, which was good. However, the rates have continued to stay very low. But in a positive note, just recently the Fed has announced that there will be a rise in interest rates to hopefully combat the recession that we may or may not already be in.
There goes our borrowing rate.
So that's great. That move has already started. I've already started to see our rates climb there, and so we can expect to see more interest, increased revenue from our cash deposits in the future, which is great because it's free money, which is my favorite kind of money. In terms of our investments, at the most recent town meeting, the town voted to approve Article 50, which was the prudent investor legislation. And thank you for your support on that article. This is very important to me, and I think very important for the town. And what it really does is once we are able to submit this legislation to the legislature and it passes, it removes the requirement of what is known as the Massachusetts legal list of investments, which severely restricts what we can invest in the equity market. It has a list of 22 stocks and bonds. This list was made decades ago, and it's never been updated, never been looked at. So without that restriction, we now have access to the market where we can be much more diverse, access to much safer investments with better return potential. If you're trying to be conservative with your investments and diversified like we are, of course, only choosing from 22 stocks is probably not an excellent way to go about it. And then just further to that, there is not any change to our overarching investment strategy. This is not an opportunity to go out and just start investing and speculating. We're keeping our allocations the same, but we hope to see more growth and more security in our investments there. Moving on to the performance and how they did. Third quarter was a down quarter for the market. So we did see negative returns. Trust funds were down 1.18%. Stabilization in CPA down 1.49%. And the OPEB account was down 6.57%. I'm going to talk about that OPEB return for a second there because you just got done hearing about how we have that huge increased liability that we're going to have to deal with. The OPEB fund has more equity exposure than these other two funds do because we don't need that money right now. We're funding a liability way further into the future. And so we have an opportunity where we're going to want to try to get that to grow at a reasonable level, in particular because we just learned that we have a much higher liability to get to. So giving us a little more room there for some equity exposure, still offset by a lot of fixed income investments. It's in my opinion, the right place for that to be, to try to really do our best to fund that long term. And then just further to that, of course, it's never nice to see negative returns. However, our investments as a whole did outperform the S&P 500 index, so we did better than the market as a whole. Market downturns are actually a really good opportunity for us to take a look at our investments and see if they're working the way they should be. So in this quarter, what I would have expected is for the returns to be down for all three accounts, but to be much less so for the stabilization in CPA, and then for the OPEB to follow the market a little bit more, and that's exactly what we are seeing here. And that is the entirety of my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mary Jo?
Decades ago, huh? I was there then at the State House, but and I presented 50 because I really think that this is the best policy for the town to look at some other. 22 is ridiculous for all the towns in the state of Massachusetts, and I'm glad that we're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a list somehow in the future of who we are using.
Well, like next year?
When we're going to,
and further to that, if you want to have a general idea of what the portfolio will kind of look like, you can look at the OPEB's portfolio. There's a lot more, again, equity exposure there. But what we're going to do is be putting our money in funds and not picking stocks. So we're going to be exposing ourselves to the market at the relevant amounts for each account and doing it that way.
Okay. So I have kind of a process question here. I supported the article too, and I'm glad we're doing it, and for a lot of reasons and so forth. And I should say this too. So many people know I did this served on the select board many years ago, And the level of sophistication in the finance department that we're seeing right now is really gratifying. And that's not taking a swipe at anybody before, but this department is really really working solidly and transparently and robustly to really, I think, give us a lot of confidence in our entire financial picture, which I really appreciate. So this next question is just really in this adjustment, this change, we pursued this change and so forth. What is your internal process for sort of strategizing how you're going to make changes in your and you've spoken to some of it, but do you have a process for this period of transition as you're changing to a different investment strategy?
Yeah, it will be myself and the CFO. We'll be having a lot of discussions about how we want to do that. We also work with Bartholomew Investments out of Worcester, an investment advisor. They specialize in municipal investments. They have a lot of old treasurer collectors and obviously brilliant people, right? So we'll be talking to them about what we think what the best moves are. Some really smart people there. But yeah, I think it makes it simpler now that we don't. There is this whole broad market to invest in now, but we know what we're going to be looking for, right? Which is index funds, which is bond funds managed by competent managers.
I appreciate that. It's funny that you say it's simpler now that it's much more expansive. But I do appreciate, and I knew that you had sort of answered my global question a little bit, but I think that it's comforting to me, but I think it's comforting to the town as a whole to sort of at least have some insight into how this transition is going to be managed. And I expect we'll get some updates on how it is unfolding and, what your sort of emerging strategy may be if it's changing.
Absolutely, and I'll be sure to put updates like that in my future reports.
Perfect, thank you.
Shado?
Thank you. I would echo the same. I mean, a lot of good focus, and thanks for all the wonderful work, very much needed, especially for planning and the future budget projections. I appreciate that. A couple of technical questions. The CPA fund, we have about, I think, 6.5 million. Are all of those invested in the same 30-70 split? Or I'm asking that because I remember a couple of years ago we were talking about it and it wasn't fully invested. Do you have the data? If not now, we can check back later.
Yeah, it is. The stabilization CPA is actually at 90-10.
90
fixed income, because that's the one that we want to make sure we have available if we need to dip into it, specifically the stabilization. Yes.
Excellent. And you have the full amount invested, is that right?
The full amount that we're allowed to invest for CPA.
Right, because I remember...
Yeah, I know what you're...
You all did a wonderful job in gathering it, but it wasn't fully invested. Thank you. And second is, the market changes are obviously unpredictable and hopefully temporary, but does these numbers going in negative, and I'm glad you have good distribution, good risk management, and that's why it's much better than even our own investments, I'm sure. But generally speaking, overall, did you get to forecast this and see what are the budget impacts, if any, based on some of the hiccups that we are seeing? And it may be a complex equation, but I'm just curious if there is any gotcha that you see because of this.
I don't think we specifically are looking towards investment returns when we're thinking about the budget. Our goals here, again, is safety, liquidity, yield. We want to make sure we're not losing any money and that we can access it when we need to. And then the third thing is making all that money. I don't think I would see a direct budget impact, right? We can't control the market. We can control how we budget. This is investment income is not a sources of funds on the sources and uses in the budget. So
yeah. No, thank you. And follow up, you're absolutely right. It wouldn't be impacting the budget, but overall the risk strategy, you don't see any red flag because of this?
No, I don't. I mean, this is moving in line with what we saw in the market, and it's also moving in line specific to our allocations for each account in the direction we would have expected.
Very good. Thank you. Great presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm assuming this is the case, but you have a page on your website now for finance overview and metrics, and you guys will put all these reports there for everybody to find.
Yep, there's a link right on the treasurer collector page for the quarterly report.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As Chris is working out through the chair, there was a question asked in terms of how we compare to other communities relative to how we're funding OPEB. The last PERAC report showed Hopkinton at 69 out of 351 towns in terms of funding ratio for OPEB.
Oh, so we are in the top quadrant.
Yeah, 69 out of 351.
Good to know.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
it.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Thanks to Ben.
Okay, so now we will move on to performance review and goal setting process for the town manager, police chief, and fire chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This process works through the chair, and so I worked this process through with Irfan, the prior chair. And this year, we're just putting out a timeline, so the process doesn't change at all, but rather there's a timeline and targets. And so where are we? The town manager, police chief, and fire chief have all prepared self-assessments. I've shared them individually with each board member, and shared the forms. The forms haven't changed this year either, but shared the updated forms. And so the next step is that the select board members, either if they haven't yet, reach out to the town manager, fire chief, and police chief to kind of go over their self-assessment, as well as one of the questions in the self-assessment is what goals are you considering this year? So that's part of the process as well, the goal setting. And if you could get your feedback, individual feedback merely for my compilation by, let's see, what date did we target here?
It says May 25th?
Wednesday, May 25th.
Okay.
Then that gives me about 2 weeks to compile it. And if you'd like to set Tuesday, June 7th as a preliminary goal discussion, so you would have met with the three of them and talked about the goals. And usually what happens is, select board members all have different ideas of goals, and I come up with a sheet full of them and then go through the process of prioritizing those goals. So you could discuss that preliminarily, if you'd like, on June 7th. And then targeting June 21st as the public performance discussion and rating assigned, as well as finalize the goals. So that was the timeline we worked out.
And since Shahidul is new to the board, you'll send them to him when he gets his new email? Or
Yes, I will. And I don't know if it'll be the same this year. In the past, so Brendan Tedstone, who's no longer on the board because the performance is about last year, Brendan will be providing feedback. Okay. And Shadul, I believe, would be part of the goal-setting process, is how it's been done in the past.
Okay.
Makes sense.
But yes, I'm happy to provide the information that you may need.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the process, Mary Jo?
No, I don't. When did you send the forms and the self-assessments?
Let's see.
I think it was
May 6th, Friday, May 6th. And Mary Jo, I sent it to 2 places.
Yeah, okay. I just, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a lot of attachments, so I know I said it at times, and I'll go back and read that when I have time.
The forms, because they have to be sent, individually so as not to violate the open meeting law.
I know where to get it.
Okay. So we'll all put on our calendar.
Feel free to give me a call tomorrow, Mary Jo, and I can look at
I'll find it. I know where to get it.
Okay. Any more questions? Or?
No.
No? Okay.
I've been through this.
No, I appreciate the detail. I am thinking in terms of 5 of us, 6 of us calling 3 people between now and Wednesday and having these discussions, so that might be challenging.
Sure.
No, thank you. I think I look forward to the documents and maybe try to understand the process and how we have done it in the past and what are the goals and metrics and process we're going to set up, just to understand. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I will put May 25th on my calendar to make sure I get that done by then, because it does take, you have to be thoughtful and go through it all carefully, so it does take some time. Okay, we're all set with that, and we'll work it's now on us, we need to do our work. Right?
All right, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, then I think we're to the town manager report.
Yes, first off, I should apologize. I noticed the town manager report in the meeting packet did not have the correct reference to the Main Street Corridor project update. It's attached to the memo, and clearly, as you can see, the work on the corridor is ramping up. The installation of conduits is progressing, and the last I checked with Dave, in fact, over the last 3 weeks, we've gained at least 2 more weeks on the schedule.
Oh, I had a schedule 2 weeks. Okay.
Yes, and this was achieved primarily because of increasing the number of crews working on the project. And then MWRA connection, as well as the PFAS updates. I provided the roadmap that John Westerling and I have put together for implementing the town meeting votes. In terms of the MWRA connection, I think the significant step would be what we're currently working on, namely making an appearance before the Southborough Select Board to receive their formal approval of the work that we've proposed. At staff level, we are in agreement with our colleagues. Now we need a formal okay from the Southborough Select Board. And when we get the date to make that visit, we will invite the Select Board members here to join us. Okay, PFAS, I think the big question that we had from the public is, when is the filtration system coming in? So I'm really encouraging John to make sure that we stay on schedule and that we see this project to completion sooner rather than later. We will continue to provide updates regularly to the community on how we're doing, as well as also sharing any information, new information that we learn in terms of the PFAS levels in the communities, especially well number 6.
Do we ask questions at the end?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or should we?
Yeah, we can pause here and take questions.
Questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I discussed these two together because they are somewhat related.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the PFAS, either the MWRA or the filtration system?
To the chair. Yeah. Thank you. I think this is very helpful. I'm still trying to understand some of the kind of choices among these. And one question, generally speaking, is we are focused on MWRA connection design. Obviously, this is an important issue. We want to solve it, and that's one of the viable options. And then we are fixing it for the immediate needs, the filter on well 6. Do you feel enough analysis done yet to plan which way one or the other, both long-term problem-solving perspective and financial perspective, the choices look like, and what's our best course of option? The reason I'm saying that is that if we don't know early enough, we don't want to double invest. That's not ideal, right? So what point do you think we'll reach to that point that we absolutely can present to the town residents that these are the options and this is our preferred path and this is how much it's going to cost, what the impact is? Obviously we want this to be solved, but in a more predictable way in the long term.
Yeah, that's a very good question. if we have not been clear, I think we have to be very clear on this, John. Namely, that whilst we have discussed the PFAS issue alongside the MWRA solution, there are many other reasons besides the PFAS issue as to why we're moving forward with the MWRA connection. So just to be clear.
Capacity and.
Yes. Just to be clear that the financial analysis or the impact of the solutions we have looked into for the PFAS on their own don't drive the decision on the MWRA connection.
Thank you. That helps clarify.
Yeah, and then specific to your question, yes, we do have preliminary numbers showing why connecting to the MWRA is a preferred option for the town. That's why we are making this $1.5 million investment to now move the project into the feasibility phase. We did share that information leading to town meeting, but what I'm taking from you is perhaps, John, we need to broadcast that information more broadly so that people understand that the decision to move to the MWRA connection has been made and it goes beyond just the PFAS solution. The solution that we're pursuing in terms of the PFAS issue is tied to the mandated regulatory requirements by DEP. First, address the need immediately. That's why we went with the water rebate program, the bottled water rebate program. And then secondly, as we are pursuing a long-term solution, we are required to have an interim solution in place. And that's why we went with the filtration process. And John also is here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, the connection to the MWRA, we've only authorized spending for the first part of it. It's going to take years to accomplish. So the filtration system is still needed for the next few years, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we have to do the two because we need them both.
Yeah,
right. The immediate one is, of course, urgent and necessary. Thank you for that clarification. I think it's good to have that coming to, I think, more communication would certainly help. We heard a lot of questions on this from the residents. And a follow-up on that, I think you have the information and it's really available in many forms. It would be good to have it together to answer some of the open questions. For example, going to the MWRA would also mean that we have definitely it has all the benefits, right? And it has also somewhat dependency on working with other, how many, 23 towns or whatever the number of towns are on MWRA. And just to educate, us, educate the town, it would be good to lay out that information too. And I'm sure John has a wealth of information on that. Those type of questions I think would help us and the town as a whole to understand the rationale little more, if not already. And last but not the least is the questions I heard also is related to we being very blessed with a lot of natural resources, lakes, and our own various sources of water. What are the rationale not to plan with that? And I'm sure, that analysis is there, part of the decisioning process, but it would be helpful to make that available or shed some light on those questions probably.
Yeah, those are brilliant suggestions. In fact, one of my big takes from the town meeting process was the list of questions that were asked regarding this topic, leading us to, we now need to start a list of FAQs for each project, just to make sure that this information is out there in the public.
That'd be great.
Not very many people actually attended town meetings, so we may not have heard the answers.
Exactly.
And I noticed in your memo, it looks like a 22-week delivery time once we get the, once we order the filtration vessel, so that's still a long time before we're going to get the filtration system in place. And then I think I forwarded you a question via email about the water rebate that it's unclear for, if you rent a home and your water bill is paid by your landlord, how do you get, but you are in one of these subgroups that is sensitive, how do you get, you can't get a water rate rebill because you don't pay your own water bill, but you need the bottled water. So how does that work?
If interesting enough, with your permission, John, feel free to join us up here. John and I did review that issue and we came up with an answer to the question. Sorry, we have not responded to your email question. Yeah.
Good evening. Through the chair, those folks that live in an apartment complex where they don't pay a water bill directly, it's baked into their rent, they will be issued a check from the town of Hopkinton in the same amount of $20 per month at the time that monthly water bill goes out to their apartment complex.
Okay. So they can just, would they fill out the same form that a resident that pays their own water bill would fill out, and they'll just explain they don't have an account?
That's correct.
They're a renter. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
We've got several of those already.
Perfect. All right. Okay, we're all set with PFAS?
Yes, I believe we're all set.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Town meeting, post-mortem.
Well, guess.
Yes, it's staff level. We've already started the discussion. We met as senior leaders and identified what went well for town meeting and what needs to be improved upon. Following that meeting, we met with the town moderator and went through the same process. And then based on the information that we received from those conversations, we have now put together a survey that will be distributing to the entire community, just to receive feedback on what is working well and what needs to be improved upon. I believe we should be ready to release that survey as early as tomorrow.
Okay, great.
And again, we are interested in hearing from the select board in terms of what you think worked well and what we need to improve upon.
Well, we need to get definitely more attendance so that we don't lose quorum. I think everybody appreciates when you get through it in 2 nights. Not having kind of come back a third night is tough for most people. I'm trying to think. The change of location, I think, too, which I know we had to do because of COVID. I think that can be a factor. It's not very comfortable to be there.
I like it better.
You like it better? Okay.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
I think that the middle school is dim and nap-inducing.
It is,
frankly.
Warm, yeah.
I do have a couple questions. Does the survey include asking about meeting day and time if people would welcome consideration of a change?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then, and this is not a criticism, but it's an observation. Anytime you change spots, we did have trouble with people being able to see or hear. So if we're back in the field house, we need to give that some thought, I think, to make sure the AV is adequate to make sure everybody can see and hear what's going on.
Yes, another good point. We've already addressed that issue. We will look for screens that will be available for the community even beyond town meeting. And I also received assurances from HCAM TV that they have an immediate solution to the closed caption delay.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Those captions were on like I don't know, several second delay, so if you're watching the captions, it was behind.
It was, I think it was Nancy Peters who came up and said she couldn't, it's hard to concentrate and really understand what's going on with that kind of delay. The other, I'm going to step on the third rail. I think we should revisit the concept of a consent agenda in the order of saving time. I know that it was new, and then it was questioned, and I don't have any objection to that. It was a new process, and people didn't love it, but I think that it's worth trying as long as we socialize it and we publicize well in advance what items will be on it. And necessarily, items on the consent agenda would not be controversial items that we expected a lot of discussion about. That's always, that's always a hard thing to predict. But there is a process, an easy process. It's like the CPC article. There's a very easy process if people understand it. to carve out, just like we do in our meetings, to carve out an issue if it is going to warrant more discussion. I do think that it could be a substantial time saver if people found it. Is that on your survey?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So we'll see. Maybe people will hate it. If they hate it this time, I think I give up, but excuse me.
Sorry, I didn't go in order. Mary, did you have any
Through the
thoughts or
chair,
comments?
yeah. I observed a bunch of men on one night, and at the end of the field question, 30 men got up and left the town meeting from all over. But because they were going out that one door, I started to count. It just looked odd to me to see so many men leaving at the same time. And they came for that one vote and left. And then we were left with not a quorum. So I don't know. A lot of towns are having this problem, and they're doing their budget and budgetary things up front, and then articles they're putting in a pot and picking them out so that you don't know when your article's coming up. And people won't be leaving necessarily. Or they'll at least be coming at the beginning.
Don't you have to publish the order?
No, I don't think you do, because a lot of towns are doing it.
The warrant has to be published in a lot.
I know that they are, so.
Yeah. Well, it's an idea we can look into to see what other towns.
Because of this specific problem, people come for one article, they know when it's coming up, they come in just before it, and they leave right after, and it's kind of unfair to the citizens. Of course, I want to ask everybody, what did you do for your town and your country today? And nobody seems to want to answer that question. To allow 126 people to make all of the financial decisions for you and the town is ridiculous. And then complain about it, which they do. I mean, I've worked in enough offices in this town and other towns to hear the complaints. It's like, if you don't come to town meeting, I don't want to hear it. But I will listen. Somehow we really have to motivate the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
You all set?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done off my soapbox.
You have a whole bunch. Okay, I have a couple more. One, I should have started with, everybody did a great job. The town employees and everybody did a great job. We were well prepared. I think it actually went really smoothly. I know quorum is an issue. Quorum's been an issue since time began, and if we can think about ways to support people so they're able to stay, it sort of made me think. We have talked about, and we have actually successfully provided babysitting at times, and it's something that we could reach out to the youth groups and the PTA and see if we can support parents of young children. And in that case, then I think we need to also sort of commit to ending, potentially, this is just me thinking out loud, at 10. So, if I know my children, let me just say it this way, my children, when they were younger, did that babysitting, and on those nights, they were bedraggled because they didn't get home until very late. So there has to be some sort of global thought process around that so that the kids who are providing the service also get home in time to be ready for school the next day. But it's always been appreciated when it's been provided, and it does boost attendance.
Okay, Shadel?
Yeah, I think I would echo what you said, that, but before I get there, so I liked the venue and the arrangement. The materials were really good, presentations and readiness of the town, commendable. I mean, I think it was very well done, so kudos to the staff and kudos to you, everyone. I echo the saying that we need to be creative and see how we can increase the participation and in the democratic decision-making process. So maybe the survey will help. Certainly, I know when our kids were young, my wife couldn't attend when I was attending and vice versa. So that is a challenge. And babysitting, we can even see what the cost and benefit is. I think it will be beneficial, although it may have some other nuances to take care of. Because if the meeting goes to 11, would the kids stay till 11 in the care, things of that sort. But it is a good option to look at. The other thing I also wanted to check is, in terms of the timing, do we have any regulatory or procedural limitation that we need to do it through the weekdays at night, or are we better off doing it one day on a weekend with maybe some event or festivities even? I don't know.
It isn't specifically in the charter that it would be the first Monday evening.
Oh, it is there?
But we
Okay.
did change it for COVID, so it seems like there would be a procedure to change it if.
Just making it more attractive.
You can't also bribe people to vote. That's the thing, by providing facilities, I don't know.
That can, bring other challenges. But something to kind of think about and see if anything else. And the open meeting rule probably will prohibit us to go hybrid or any of the other options.
Yeah.
But anyways, those are some of the things I think would help. And last, which I'm glad you are doing, is collecting all the questions. I think a lot of residents feel that because of time constraints or because of not being there, even though it is the individual responsibility to be there, but to have that collective questions, which is a wealth of, I think, feedback from the residents, and try to even follow up on those after the meeting and post it so everyone feels their voice is heard and they have enough information. But great job, thank you.
No, great, thank you. It's good feedback from the board. Yep.
I got lots of feedback.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So one thing in the charter, one of our duties as a select board is to get the town report out 14 days in advance of annual town meeting, and this year we did not. It was not available till about a week ahead. So that's on us. We got to next year get it out 14 days ahead. And if we're going to have a consent agenda, I think that needs to also be out.
Absolutely.
With its explanations 14 days ahead, because I think that's part of the confusion when people don't have access to the info far enough in advance. And we really do have to respect people's time and make it an efficient meeting, so the consent agenda is good. And I feel for people, though, that do have to leave after their article is done, because you don't know what's going on in their life. Do they have to be at work at 4 a.m.? Do they have to get their kids to bed? Not everybody has the luxury of spending 3 nights late during the week. Anyway, and then I thought, as select board members, I don't know if we might consider this year, as leaders, stressing the importance to groups that come before us, like when the Little League comes before us and other groups for a parade permit or to get a marathon number, that we really stress the importance to them, that not to schedule their events on the night of town meeting. It's really important that someone from their group come to town meeting, and obviously we can't make them, but stress the importance of it at least. And for the survey, would you consider asking whether people might be open to having a representative town meeting instead of an open town meeting? And I'm not sure I agree with that, but I would like to know what people think. And the babysitting in the survey, I think is the babysitting in the survey, because I know that for myself, when my kids were little, I'm not going to take them to a babysitter till 11 at night, to go to town meeting. So I don't know how many people would utilize it or not. I know some people have utilized it years we've had it.
Well, if it's a school vote, man, they have used it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people like to be
They're
able
good.
to attend.
I think some other towns do that.
I just wanted to say that we had 2 town meetings during COVID, and one was absolutely freezing, but the first one that we had in the parking lot, or up at the school, was actually very well attended, and was a very good town meeting. It was almost better than the one we had the other night at the high school, so.
But I think we removed half the articles.
Huh?
We did.
We removed about half the articles, so it was
Not
really
half,
quick.
not half, but a few, yeah, we did.
And we reduced the
The
quorum.
big zoning ones and planning ones at that time, but still, we attracted a better number of people.
No, we reduced the quorum, so it didn't matter.
We had
I don't think we
people,
had more than 128.
yeah, we had people sitting up on the hill, people sitting out back, people in cars. We had more people than we actually counted, I think.
Well, I hope not.
Well, maybe we didn't have
I
many.
hope we counted all the attendance.
Yeah.
I hope only the voters voted.
But they didn't all sit under the tent.
I appreciate that you're reaching out for that information.
Yeah, I think
that's the key point.
Very valuable.
Yeah. Through the chair, we had stayed away from asking if people prefer representative town meeting or open town meeting. We thought that was a political question and would perhaps distort the results of the main questions we have here.
Well, when the charter review comes up, I hope that they will look into that. There's pros and cons to it, so
Yeah.
I don't necessarily favor it.
Yeah, perhaps one way we could do that is at the end we have an open-ended question. We could suggest, for example, you may comment on whether you prefer an open town meeting or representative town meeting.
Okay.
Okay. And then moving on. Mobile gas station, there's a request to perform night work, and this is specifically to accommodate the installation of utilities which will require disrupting traffic on West Main Street. And that's a very busy segment of that part of the town and West Main Street. Thus, our suggestion and recommendation is that the work be done overnight. There are few residents to be disturbed, and we have asked that the noise levels be kept to a minimum.
How long? I'm sorry.
For how many nights?
How many nights?
June, just one night.
Oh, just one night, okay.
Now, do we have enough notification sent to the residents, had a discussion with them, kind of what's convenient? I mean, it has to be done, obviously.
Yeah.
But what is convenient, or get their feedback?
Yeah, definitely we'll ask Mobile to reach out to the residents. Again, as you know, geographically, we do not have immediately abutting residents. The only resident that was there has since left. But there are residents across as you head into Elm Street. Yeah. Okay.
Elm Street may have.
So do we need to vote on that?
Yes, we need a motion to authorize it.
I'll move to approve overnight work for one night on the mobile gas station.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there more discussion?
Yeah. So you're gonna, I'm just trying to understand, you have reached to the residents across, or you are going to, or DPW is going to, what's the plan?
Usually when we make this request to the board, it's on condition that there will be proper notification to the residents ahead of the work being done and also immediately before the work is done.
Thank you, yeah. I just want to make sure that they are in the conversation and we hear.
Okay.
So do you want to add that to the motion, that on the condition that the residents will be notified in advance?
Yeah.
Yes.
And, well, and but it's mostly businesses near there, so it'd be business owners, I guess.
I think only Elm Street, there's a few houses on Elm Street that might be close enough to hear, but that's all.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I will accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then last but not least, in recognition of the town's goal to be transparent, we are announcing the release of the executive session minutes of June 6, 2017, September 26, 2017, and April 24th, 2018.
Okay. So you're just letting us know?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? So this is, I have not checked. Is it by any chance easier to search and find minutes on our website than it was last year at this time?
So I did meet with the IT department over April break, and they are working on purchasing a new document management system that would allow that, but that is, they're investigating options.
Okay, so the answer is not yet.
Not yet, but
it's in process.
But we voted on the money for that in the budget, right?
grand plan is in the works.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And to the chair, quick question. Just for understanding, what is the lag time for releasing these?
It's when the issue is no longer required to be secret.
Sensitive, right.
So do you review them once a year or twice a year?
Oh, no, regularly. It's on an ongoing basis.
So ongoing 5-year lag, or there's no specific rule?
It can vary, like, if we're still involved in a lawsuit, we would still keep it secret till that lawsuit ends. And now we'll have to look up those dates that you just read off and see what they were about. If it was a juicy topic. Or what.
So long as the issue that was being discussed has been resolved.
Yeah.
So it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And there are some instances too where the agenda for a particular meeting may have 4 issues. If we see 3 that have been resolved, we release the minutes and redact the one that has not.
I like that, yeah.
So just to make sure that we keep the process moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's it for me.
That's it for town manager's report? Okay. Okay, so the next would be liaison reports and board invites. So are there any liaison reports?
I have
Yeah.
one. Thursday morning, we had an MWRTA meeting, and it's really a shame because Ed Carr is still there, and he's giving them 45 more days because they haven't found a replacement for him yet. He resigned 2 or 3 months ago, I think, actually. And so they're still looking for another director of the MWRTA, transportation director, so that's all. I just wanted to report it.
Okay, any liaison reports or invitations?
No, I'm all set. Board invites, what is that?
Like, I think the Freedom Team invited us to participate in the Pride Parade would be an example.
Okay, perfect.
Let's see. And I think that they did, actually. I think we just got an email today.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. I assume you don't have any liaison reports yet? Right?
Not yet.
Okay. And so we did get invited to the, we could discuss it at the next meeting, but I think about the Pride Parade, correct? Let me just, that was just today. So, let's just check, just checking the email. Yeah. So the Freedom Team and Youth Commission are hosting the 2nd annual LGBTQ+ Pride Parade, and we were wondering if the select board would like to be included in the town officials legislators group. It will be Sunday, June 19th from 2 to 5:30 p.m. I think I would be available to attend, and if town staff would be welcome to attend as well.
Yeah.
It's an enthusiastic heck yeah for me.
I enjoyed it last year. I couldn't walk all the way around 4 times, but I made it twice, so that was pretty good, and I enjoyed the day.
So I'll apply to Freya that at least some of us, for sure, should be able to attend.
Yeah, I've already replied. Yes, I'm attending. Yes.
You were there with your wife last year, weren't you?
Well, last year, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then, so the liaison, we'll have to choose our liaison assignments like we did last year now. The ones that Brenda did, particularly will need to be divided up. So that's...
So is it a clean slate and we can sort of rethink liaison assignments openly?
I think we can.
Yeah.
That's what I would prefer.
Yes, in fact, because the board will still meet in June, it may be helpful for you to go through the list and set any suggestions you may have to Vasuda, and we'll start putting some list together.
Perfect.
Yeah. However, through the chair, there's one big update from this weekend that we haven't mentioned.
What was, oh, the Happy New 101?
Exactly, please.
Yeah, so Norman, Elaine, and I went, and Mary Jo went to Happy New 101 and held a select board town manager's table, and we tried to talk up getting people to apply to boards and committees, and some people asked about PFAS. I'm trying to remember what other people had septic issues. They wanted to know what to do, and the Board of Health was there too, so we were able to direct them to the Board of Health. So it's a worthwhile event. It was not super widely attended, but I think as we have it again annually now that COVID's done, I think we'll get more people.
Yeah.
So thank you to the library for organizing.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's a nice event. I was not able to go this year, but I went previously, and it's a very, very nice event.
And I lost a hearing aid, so. If anybody turns one in, know where it goes.
2 years ago, I thought Vizuda sent us out a Google Doc, and we could check off our preferred liaison roles, and then we would come to the meeting to finalize it. I don't know if that's still an option.
Okay.
Or we could just each send a list of our top ones that we'd like to do.
So if we fill in a shared Google Doc, then it's not transparent to the public. I think we need to send it to Vizuda and then bring it.
Okay.
We send it individually?
Yeah, because otherwise we'd be having a hot conversation over a Google Doc.
There is version history, and we did it once before, so how many roles are there total, I guess? So we should count them up here.
I think I had 7 last year.
Yeah, that sounds about right, that we would each want to have 7 or 8 or
About
something
7,
like
it
that.
was something like that, you know.
So I guess then if everyone could send to Vizuda 7 or 8 that they would like to do, and then at the next meeting, we'll see where the gaps are and who wants to, there might be one job that everybody wants. A liaison.
Or nobody wants.
Nobody wants, right?
Oh, let's not talk about that.
Okay.
Oh, on the top of this new sheet, it doesn't have our names, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, well,
She'll fill it
in
out.
for next time.
She'll fill it out when she completes it. Right, when we send the information in, she'll put our name on top of it.
Okay, so we're all just going to fill out one row.
Pick 7.
Or you could just email her which ones.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. I was just going to check this off and send it in, but makes sense.
Oh, and it has, I'm sorry, there's a column on the blue column shows what we had last year, so if you don't remember.
All of us? It doesn't.
Well, not Shadul, but.
Mine won't print, it's too. It can fit on the paper.
Okay, and then, so any board members have future agenda items? Mary Jo, do you have any future agenda items?
Not right now, no.
Okay. Mary?
No, not tonight.
Shall
I have a few, but I can add it later or send it.
Yeah, or if you say it now, it'll be in the minutes and then look add to the list.
I mean, top of the head would be one, our update on Central School.
Oh, an update on
I think that one might be on the list, but if not.
Yes, it's on the list for the next meeting.
Oh, it is actually, okay. Yeah, and a few others, I'll probably send it later then.
Okay. And there is a list in the end of it. Let's see.
I lied, by the way, I have one.
You do have one, okay.
There's a sheet.
Work, we gather all of those and then slot it in various meetings.
Oh, we have a running list and it's at the, so we just all add to the list and then we try to figure out when we can squeeze them into the agenda, so, yeah. Okay, what's the one you have?
It may be on the list, I just closed the document, but an update on the no left turn, now that there is a big brightly painted white turn left here sign out of Cumbies.
Yes, in fact, we are working with Mass DOT. We are now seeking their input on a solution that we may be moving forward.
Okay. I think it's a subject of reasonably heightened concern and interest, and if we can sort of keep the public updated, that would be great.
Okay.
And we were working on the mobile station across the street. This might be the time to do something, or...
Through the chair, a couple of probably immediate ones. One is, do we have a separate session on kind of the trail-related discussion?
Yeah,
Related discussion?
is that on our list for Upper Charles Trail to come?
Oh, yes. Yes, in fact, both the Permanent Building Committee and the Upper Charles Trail Committee are planning to join the select board at your June meeting.
At the June meeting.
To discuss Center School and the trail, respectively.
Okay. And then for Main Street, downtown corridor, is there a periodic update that you have? That's
every meeting.
Every meeting.
That's great. Top of the head, those. Affordable housing, do we get update on those time to time, or how do we?
I think not regularly. However, because of the action taken at town meeting, Now we'll have an office that will be monitoring our affordable housing units, and therefore we'll ask that office to report regularly to the select board.
So you'll be issuing a job posting for that, right? You haven't hired a person yet, right?
We have not hired the
But when you
person.
hire the person, maybe that would be a good time for us to.
Absolutely, after July 1.
All right.
Yeah.
And then, I'm spitting out a few now.
Yeah,
I'll probably
please
add
do.
them later. The Economic Development Office that we growth study recommended and we talked about, is that something we
Economic
have on our
development, is it?
agenda in the future, or maybe
Well, I think
we
it
can?
was in the budget to hire a new person at town hall this year, right?
We are filling an existing position, and added to the responsibility for that position will be economic development.
And so you probably haven't advertised for that position yet either,
Yes.
We haven't, yeah.
but they will start.
Right. No, that's great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we can keep it in a future agenda, just to check not only on that, it's an ongoing, it's on your radar, that's great, but to kind of add a little more framework around it, how and what, and how it's gonna kind of add to our goals from growth study committee or overall economic development thinking and planning.
So maybe when you hire the person and they get their feedback, they could come before us?
Yes.
Did I confuse you? Sorry.
Yeah, here's what I heard you to be saying. I heard you to be saying that you expect this position to be furthering the goals and objectives of the growth study committee. That would be a reference point for this position. It's not the only guiding principle. We hire individuals who bring certain expertise, and when in fact they are starting a new position, we ask them to develop a roadmap that will bring the most benefit to this community. So I just wanted to make sure that we're clear that this is again an existing position with other responsibilities beyond economic development.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I kind of heard too. Maybe we can discuss it a little more elaborately, that is that sufficient for what we are trying to do, or do we need to revisit it and add some of the job description or, roles and goals criteria just to match? I don't know what it is now for that position, but if it is, say, one of 10 responsibilities, would it be sufficient for what we are trying to do or achieve? That's an open discussion. I'm not making any opinions right now, but to understand would be the first goal, and then see if it matches with our or economic development intent that we are talking about.
Yes. We can assure you, we constantly review our responsibilities. We're also very mindful of allowing our staff to balance work and social life. We are very mindful of not burning out employees. Thus, since this is a new initiative, we have a long way to go to develop the data that is required to make us reach our many goals. And so what you're hearing from me is we are approaching this very carefully. We're going to be deliberate. There are many things that this town wishes to be doing. The budget does limit our ability to do all the things that we would like to do. And this is the first step that we're taking to make this work, especially alongside other things that we've already been doing to make this a great economic destination for many businesses and people who work here.
Really appreciate it. And again, we don't want to overburden someone's responsibility. But I'm thinking it might be a good idea to put it on one of the upcoming agenda, so we can understand, what the current situation looks like with the position we have, and we can also gather our thoughts on, is this sufficient, is there creative ways we can do it, or even if it's a budgetary discussion, we just want to shed some lights on it to, address the objective without overburdening budget, without overburdening someone's current responsibilities. And I don't know the answer because I don't know exactly what the responsibilities are.
Yeah.
But I know our intent, so I just want to shed some lights to it so we can reflect on that.
Yeah. Perhaps through the chair, we may want to talk offline so that I can better understand what you're looking for. The reason being, we just went to town meeting with a clear explanation as to what we're trying to do. Do you have further questions on what we told town meeting we're going to do? That's not clear to me in this conversation. I.e., we just recently went through the process of establishing the baseline. I'm hearing you saying you want to revisit the baseline.
No, that's not what I'm first trying to understand, because when I asked about it, I thought your answer was this position is the answer. And now I'm hearing it may not be the answer. So I'm trying to reconcile that first and then see what possible solution are. That's all.
Okay.
Of course, we don't want to, shake up what we just agreed and what we just passed as our budget.
Okay.
But my question, if you remember, was exactly that, what are we doing about the Economic Development Office, about this role? And I think your answer was this is an open position, we are going to hire, and it will fulfill that criteria. And maybe it was, quick, brief question and answer. Maybe there's some opportunity to understand, each other's ask and situation a little better to, work together to solve it now or in future when we have the opportunity. That's all.
Yeah. Again, through the chair, what are we doing about economic development? We have the town manager, we have the assistant town manager doing, for now, that work. We have a position that has been vacant in the town manager's office. That's the special projects position that you may know Jamie Helen used to do that work. We went to town meeting and said we will fill that position. And at the same time we asked town meeting to give us more funds for the salary for this position so that we can now bring in some aspects of economic development. What we have understood is that there are at least 3 aspects of economic development that we need to address. The first being the day-to-day operational work. This position will do that. There is also the policy level work that needs to be done. The assistant town manager and town manager will continue to do that. Then there is the relationship between the existing businesses in town and town government. The town manager will continue doing that through the chamber. That's what we're doing regarding economic development.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I think what would be helpful, sounds like you have those bullet points with the job description. If you can share that, we can all process it and then have a maybe offline discussion as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
No, good question. Yeah.
Okay, so that's future board agenda items. Okay, I think we are
Ready to adjourn.
I think we're ready to adjourn. Vice Chair, do you want to make a
I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.